there are budgets printed for you if you didn't grab one, and it's also available online at actonma.gov/manager. The capital plan is also up there as well if you're looking for that. We did not print that for you all, but that's how you find that. There's questions in front of you, which I'll go over in a moment. And we welcome additional questions, and some of them we actually said we're not ready to answer, which we'll be ready to answer for you on Tuesday, or by Tuesday when we reconvene. And we also have provided an FTE chart, which, what do you think if I just go over that now? Or do you want it that way before? So it'll be kind of like a prelude to the programming. So there was a question last night. The Finance Committee has been meeting every night this week. And so in their meeting last night, there was a discussion about FTEs and what they look like and what they looked like in the past. So there is a question that references that in the big sheet, but more detailed information is on a smaller sheet with some red on the top. And it basically, if you look at the top portion, it shows in current fiscal year, the FTEs we have by department, and then what's proposed in the FY26 budget that we're going over tonight. And then there was a lot of discussion last night about other sources and how to account for that. And I think we could probably account for it more comprehensively, but what we have below this is a list by department of positions that are funded out of sources other than the general fund. So for example, the ambulance enterprise funds 11 positions, building revolving funds positions, CPA, sewer, food service, hazmat, sealers, transfer station, fund portions of positions, road maintenance, a portion, stormwater, a portion, grants, fund a portion as well. Does this have the police one?
So it is. It's the, right here, the clinical responder.
It doesn't have it.
The,
Okay. This is the older version.
this is, so what are you talking about? You get money from the Department of Public Health.
Okay. Do the select board have any questions about that, just as a way to use some time here? Or any FinCom members attending a select board meeting? Okay. We, just other updates, we started to work on a town meeting calendar. There are a lot of timelines that fall into place as we get up to our May 5th annual town meeting. A draft was published with the select board. Thank you, Marianne. The draft was published in the select board packet earlier this week. We'll have an updated one that we'll be distributing before this next budget workshop. But basically, the Finance Committee has several meetings planned in January. The select board has this one, another one next week. There'll be more of a normal schedule in February. And then there's some deadlines that need to be met as it relates to the town meeting. The budget needs to be transmitted from the select board to the Finance Committee by March 6th. The zoning public hearing, which is required for any zoning article that goes to town meeting, will take place March 18th. The last day to file, that's related to the election. There's timelines related to the upcoming election at the end of March. The last select board meeting to vote printed article recommendations, this is always a question that comes up, April 7th. So even though we have a draft warrant that'll be prepared and start looking at it probably at our first February meeting, and we'll get that to the Finance Committee as soon as we can. We'll plan to have discussions about the articles leading up to that date. Any questions about the town meeting timeline?
Thank you. We're now in order.
Okay. Okay, welcome. Thank you for being here. As I mentioned, I know this is a busy time of year, and you've all been out here a few times already this week. We appreciate you being here to listen to us. This is a night that I'm really excited about. Throughout the year, you hear a lot from me. You hear from Mary Ann maybe and Tom, but this is a night where you get to meet all the people that do all the hard work in the organization. And it's really fun to be able to listen to our very talented and professional department staff present to you the work that they do on behalf of you all, and field questions from you, and provide details about some of the cool things that they do every day. That it's hard, even in this budget book, we try to tell the story, but it's hard to tell the story of all the work that goes on in this organization for this community. So these budget workshops are a nice opportunity for us to expand on that, for you to meet staff, for the staff to meet you, some new faces on the Finance Committee. It's nice to see you all, and staff will be introducing themselves as they come up for each presentation. So we're going to start with the scheduled program. I just wanted to provide a little bit of an opening remark about, to lay the context for this. The town manager's budget is going to be the source that we use. There's not going to be a PowerPoint. We're going to be just looking at this and then talking to you directly about what we do. So each department will try to reference where their programs are in the budget. So if you're following along, it's easier for you to follow along specifically. But that's going to be the program. And I think the budget that was presented on Monday night is something that we worked hard to develop, and with policy direction from the Select Board. And this is the point where we get specific feedback from the Select Board and from the Finance Committee, and work towards the timelines that I was just referring to earlier. And just to also provide context about the ALG process, which is sort of an overarching component to the development of the town's operating budget. Because of some changes in the ALG plan, I just wanted to clarify that the budget that was presented Monday night in the ALG plan represents a balanced budget with a net surplus of $54, which is pretty good. I know there's work that we still need to do on the budget, and that the school hasn't published theirs yet, so there's certainly a lot of work left to do. But I just wanted to mention that because it's changed since the last ALG meeting, which was about a month ago. So with that, I hope you had a chance to review the capital plan and some of the details that we provided in the budget book, but I'm very excited to introduce, or not introduce, you probably know her, but to welcome Mary Ann Fleckner, who is our Director of Administration and Finance. She'll be kicking off the budget presentations with the department that she oversees.
Okay, thank you, John. Good evening, Select Board and Finance Committee members. My name is Mary Ann Fleckner, and I've been with the town for 17 years before joining the town, 21 years with the Commonwealth, so a total of 38 years in administration and finance in government. I want to thank the staff, thank the administration and finance staff. I am humbled, I am honored to work with such committed, passionate, and caring colleagues. Leo Mercado and Alicia Burak in the town clerk's office, CJ Carroll, Marty Abbott, Tiffany Peters in assessing, Teresa O'Leary, Brandy Rando, Ann Miles, Emma Balaza in our collector treasurer, Ellie Anderson in finance, and Kristen Cowett, Jennifer Ashambo, Kathy Wynn in our accounting, and Mary Beth Zabak, Kat Stryker in human resources. Also, I want to acknowledge Debbie Delmark, who was a temp for us for a short while where we were bringing up some new hires. And all of these folks have taken on additional new duties, and that's something that I'm so proud of for them, and again, just so proud to be part of this organization, and I think you'll see it tonight. And under John's direction, what we keep as right on top of importance is customer service, and we're proud of that. So at this time, I'd like to point out some of our accomplishments and some of our key performance indicators, and I'll then be sharing the microphone with my division head colleagues so you can hear more about these accomplishments and goals. But in summary, is that we have been able to maintain our AAA rating in March of 2024, and we are one of the few in the Commonwealth, and we were able to recently borrow at 2.74% because of this key rating. And our goal is to maintain this AAA rating. Also, we have received the GFOA, which stands for the Government Finance Officers Association, Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. And we are also submitted and awaiting the PAFR, which is the popular annual financial reporting, which we have received certification in excellence for. And that indicator for us would be that we would continue with that GFO certification. Also, under John's direction, we'll be submitting the fiscal year 26 budget book for the first time ever for certification. And we will continue to enhance this book and provide transparency. A combination of payroll and finance and HR standpoint. On January 1st of 2024, we enrolled approximately 300 retirees into the Aetna Health Insurance Plan, and on July 1st, we enrolled all active into Blue Cross Blue Shield. And that, with a performance indicator, is that next January, we'll be looking to enroll the retirees into Blue Cross Blue Shield. You've asked us to have a turn back of 1% or less for fiscal year 24, which would have been about $400,000 turn back. We are very proud to say, and I know you know this number already, that it was $70,000, 0.19%. So our goal, again, a key performance indicator that we continue with that. You'll be hearing from Kristen Cowett later on, a little bit of news that if you see Kristen coming at the end of the fiscal year, we say either you should be ready to turn back or run. So we are proud of that. We will continue reporting our quarterly reports to the Select Board and FinCom to include the enterprise and revolving. Personal actions and time entry is a new process that we have seen with Munis with efficiencies. Also, there are programs like transportation where ANF plays a key role with the other division departments to ensure that these programs are running smoothly, not just from a finance standpoint, but from a total policy-making, processing standpoint. Now, if I can ask you to turn to page 42 of your budget book, which is the Finance Director's budget, and I'm just going to do a few highlights and then hand it over to my colleagues. So on page 42 of your budget book, you'll see that there have been decreases in small budgets, but still decreases, such as equipment maintenance, professional development, office supplies, and other supplies. Workers' compensation, it has gone down by 8.7%. And the reason for that is that we work very closely with assigned clinical teams to ensure that employees come back to work as soon as possible. Our unemployment insurance, something similar, that also decreased by 53.48%. The reason for that is that when we get an unemployment insurance claim, we do not just accept it, we fight it, and we will go all the way to the end to ensure that it is a true unemployment insurance claim. Also, you'll see that increase in Medicare by $20,000, and there are employees who began employment before you had to contribute to Medicare. Some of those employees have retired, so therefore the Medicare increases for us because we have more people who now have to contribute into Medicare. They're not exempt. And plus, if you are on a workers' comp, you do not contribute after 6 months. So that's that $20,000 that we estimated. And I will end with health insurance. I probably should have started with health insurance because that's the usual topic of the day sometimes. Many of you know, we've had many conversations about health insurance. Through Maya, they have suggested an 8 to 10% increase. So you'll see that we budgeted for that 8% increase, but also from the third line down from the bottom, you'll see APS retiree health, which increased 24.05%. That is to ensure that what we have for numbers for APS retirees, we realistically budgeted. So at this time, I'm going to hand it over to Ellie Anderson, our budget manager.
Good evening, members of the Select Board and the Finance Committee. My name is Ellie Anderson. I currently serve as the budget manager, and I've worked for the town for 2.5 years now. My transition into the role of budget manager earlier in the beginning of 2024, effectively created the budget division within the larger administration and finance department. The goal of this division is to provide a go-to one-stop resource for budgeting, revenue and expense tracking, financial forecasting, rate setting, all the way from budget development through to fiscal year closeout. This role is a collaborative one in that it's focused on working with departments every step of the budget process through all of those phases, including the various general fund budgets as well as the revolving and enterprise funds. The budget division also leads the charge on the annual tax recap process, which is truly a team effort throughout the finance department and requires involvement from every finance division. The division also works collaboratively with the town manager and the rest of the budget team on the development of the fiscal year operating budget and capital plan, and the budget book. We are particularly proud of this year's operating budget and capital plan, as it includes a wealth of data, narratives, metrics, and financial details, some of which have never been reported in this document at this level of detail. We hope that it will be a resource for anyone in the community who is interested in Acton's finances and organizational operations. Some highlights from this past year include, as Mary Ann mentioned, the FY 2024 year-end closeout process, which resulted in the lowest general fund turnback in recent memory. This was an extensive process which required ongoing work with department heads, and particularly the accounting division. Another highlight is the optimization of the Finance Committee quarterly reports, which now includes a greater level of financial detail regarding all budgeted funds, as well as plans and ongoing efforts related to those funds. We also implemented quarterly budget meetings with all departments to review on a regular basis expenses, revenues, purchase orders, as well as any ongoing projects and initiatives. We also have an ongoing effort to promote fiscal sustainability among our enterprise and revolving funds through the development of longer range financial plans and rate setting models. We've presented on such plans for the sewer enterprise and the transfer station enterprise funds, and look forward to continuing this effort with the ambulance enterprise and rec revolving funds in the second half of this fiscal year. So I thank you for your time and your attention.
Next speaking will be Kristen Cowett, our interim town accountant.
Good evening. My name is Kristen Cowett. I'm the interim town accountant. I've been with the town for 17 years. My accounting team consists of Jen Archambault and Kathy Wynn. The accounting division maintains comprehensive and detailed general ledger for all town financial activities. We prepare, submit all required reports to the Department of Revenue, such as the Schedule A and a balance sheet for preparation for free cash certification. We also reconcile cash and accounts receivables to the books of the treasurer-collector. We process a biweekly warrant that consists of payroll and payments for all town invoices. Additionally, we provide continuous training and support for all employees on payroll, accounts payable, and general financial reporting. The accounting division is currently in a period of transition with recent retirement of our town accountant, Joanne Norton. And Kathy Nguyen was promoted to full-time staff accountant. We are looking for ways to improve our processes, starting with how we process our payroll. We will be introducing and implementing time entry for all town departments. This will reduce the amount of time, manual staff hours that the accounting team dedicates to the payroll process. Our accounting budget begins on page 46, and on 47, you can see that the accounting had an increase in clerical salaries due to the promotion of Kathy Nguyen. We've also had a reduction in professional development and office supplies. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Next speaking will be C.J. Carroll, our assessor.
Hello, everybody, members of the Select Board and Finance Committee. It's good to see all of you. My name is C.J. Carroll. I'm the Principal Assessor in Acton. I've held this position for a year and a half to 2 years now. Other members of the Assessor's Office are Marty Abbott, our Assessing Analyst, who's been with the town for over 25 years, and Tiffany Peters, our newest addition, who joined the team in October. The goal of the Assessor's Office is to assess all real and personal property at full and fair cash value to result in fair and equitable taxation across all taxpayers in town. This includes maintaining a database of all parcels in town, reporting to the Department of Revenue, and following their guidelines and requirements. Analyzing and inspecting all sales in town and using this information to inform values. We also process abatements and exemptions of all types, and of course, assist residents and taxpayers whenever a question may come up. It is important that the most vulnerable members of the community are given opportunities for tax relief. So we do hold multiple presentations at the COA each year. Next one is coming up in March. We're actually making arrangements as well to expand that to other venues, such as the Robbins Brook Senior Community. Marty in our office goes above and beyond to make sure those resources are provided to those who need it. And because of this, Acton actually provides some of the most tax relief in the state, providing $675,000 in 2024. I'd like to thank everybody who attended town meeting because the HERO Act universally passed, allowing veterans exemptions to receive a cost of living increase each year. A crucial function of the Assessor's Office is to collect all new and previously unassessed property to be added to the tax levy as new growth for the year. Tiffany, our newest addition to the office, has already been an incredible asset to this function, and she's been improving and optimizing processes to make sure that our data is as accurate as possible and that all new growth is collected efficiently. On page 48, you can find the assessor's budget. The expenses outside of personnel include databases for real and personal property, the multiple listing service to find sales comps and broker contacts when needed. We also contract help for interim and certification year value adjustments and to check up on our personal property accounts once every 5 years. So new for this year, there is actually a line item or an increase in the professional services line item for data collection for $16,000. This is a new line item, a new operating line item, but it's not a new expense. So the strategy in the past was to do this state mandated data collection as one large project. But if you remember last year's capital request, so last year that was what the capital request was. This project so far is going well. Today, January 15th, was our 50% check-in. I suppose they are ahead of schedule. They're around 60%, which was very good news. But we do think that the Best way to do it moving forward would be to transition this project to be done 10% annually. That one guarantees we'll be on time for each 10-year deadline, as well as reducing some administrative burden because we're able to do it on an ongoing basis rather than managing a large project every so often. But the biggest thing that I think that it would change is that growth that is not collected via standard building permit or sales inspection would be added through this process to the levy as much as 9 years sooner than it would otherwise. So I do think that would be a really great change in the process. That's everything from me. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to answering any questions that you have.
If we could just get through the presentations, I think then Mary Ann and the team would answer any questions that come up. Thank you.
Next, I think, is an example of where we have a phenomenal team effort, is that Teresa O'Leary, who's our treasurer collector, she had broken her wrist. And so we have Brandy Rando, who is the assistant treasurer collector, and worked with her today to say, you're on. And so next is Brandy Rando, our assistant treasurer collector.
Good evening. My name is Brandy Rando, and I am, as Marianne said, the assistant treasurer collector. I've been with the town for 3 years. The treasurer collector department consists of Teresa O'Leary, the town treasurer collector, myself, and 2 new additions, Emma Belezia in the role of principal treasurer collector clerk, and Ann Mills, our staff assistant. In the absence of Teresa O'Leary, I'll be summarizing the Treasurer-Collector Department's operations. The Treasurer-Collector's Office is responsible for the accurate and timely processing and collection of real estate, personal property, excise, and sewer bills, while also providing phenomenal customer service. Our office processes almost 80,000 bills per year. The Treasury Collector's Department collected over $7 million in local receipt revenue, which primarily includes motor vehicles excise tax, building permits, and investment income. We have a very robust customer service function through receiving a high volume of phone calls, emails, and in-person requests such as paid real estate statements, balances due, and confirmation of payment histories. A few of our accomplishments include the treasurer-collector manages the town's investments, going from $35,995 in 2022 to $716,000 in 2024 by strategically moving the town's money for the best return of investment. We implemented lockbox services to reduce manual payment processing and increase efficiencies. We also assisted in implementing OpenGov for permit processing so that we are able to import, so we can import the financial data and which simplifies the permitting process to only one online system. We implemented the online ordering and payments of municipal lien certificates. And Teresa O'Leary received her certificate as a Massachusetts Municipal Collector and Certified Treasurer. We have one of the highest real estate tax collection rates in the Commonwealth at 99.6%. You'll see our budget on page 53. We have a very minimal increase in office supplies from $100 to $200. Our challenges and goals for FY26 include implement the option to pay by credit card at Town Hall, and explore the feasibility of transitioning sewer billing from monthly to quarterly billing. While also working on our goals, we are working on staying on top of cyber threats which could affect our operations. Thank you for your time. Have a good evening.
So last is Mary Beth Zabak, our Human Resources Manager for Human Resources.
Hello. As Marianne mentioned, my name is Mary Beth Zabek. I've been with the town for 5.5 years, and I am currently the town's HR manager. Under the direction of Marianne Fleckner, the HR staff consists of myself and our talent acquisition HR officer, Kathleen Stryker. And you will find our budget starting on page 54. Talent acquisition has been especially busy the past few years, and it was one of our biggest accomplishments in FY24. In FY24, we reviewed 2,500 applications and conducted 1,500 interviews. This led to 60 positions being filled, 6 of which were internal promotions. In addition, we brought on 71 seasonal employees. Although this was a huge accomplishment, hiring and retention continues to be a major challenge in HR. One goal we have for FY26 is to complete a compensation study to ensure that we are offering competitive wages when compared to our comparable communities. We also plan to continue with our Wellness Initiative Network and our Employee Recognition Committee, which are always highlights and exit interviews that we conduct. 2 more accomplishments in FY24 were 2 successful health insurance transitions. On January 1st, 2024, we moved all of our approximately 300 Medicare-eligible retirees from Medex and Tufts onto an Aetna Advantage plan. After the dissolvement of the Acton Health Insurance Trust, the town joined the Maya Consortium, which required us to transfer approximately 200 active employees from our self-funded plans with Blue Cross Blue Shield and Harvard Pilgrim to Maya's Blue Cross Blue Shield programs. This was completed in under 2 months and was one of the shortest implementation periods on record with Maya. Not only does Maya provide our health insurance, it also has a very robust wellness program, and we are excited that in FY26 we will continue to partner with them and have them come in for different programs with our WIN committee. Due to this health insurance transition, a goal for FY26 is to hire a part-time benefits coordinator. While we were self-funded, the HIT contracted with outside services to direct bill certain retirees and complete monthly audits of our approximately 500 active and retirees on benefits. We have begun to bring these functions in-house and will be able to more efficiently manage not only health insurance, but also our other benefit offerings. Thank you.
So we can entertain questions now. David? Or I don't know if Fran, if you...
I just have a very quick question for CJ. And on page 49, it shows the number of taxable parcels in town went down in FY25. Why was that?
Sure, that's a good question. So if you remember, the select board actually voted in what's called a personal property taxable minimum. And that amounts $2,500. So if there's a valuation on a personal property account for under $2,500, that is being deemed essentially not worth taxing. That's the majority of it. There were also, the first line you're always gonna see when you look at the totals report is the single families. That did reduce by about 7. That's standard cleanup of data, things that should have been represented in chapter land. They're now represented in chapter land, but that has no real impact on the actual bottom line total parcels or taxable value. The big impact was that personal property exemption or minimum.
Thank you.
I'm glad we're starting off with the finance folks because we're the numbers people. And I think we can all data geek out. This is a good place to start. As I indicated Monday night and last night, one of the steps forward is understanding your goals. One of the questions that I'm going to ask everybody, so this isn't a surprise, is what are the metrics or key performance indicators that you use or you think we should use to evaluate your progress against those goals? And for example, this year you guys did phenomenal work just adjusting to the, health insurance change in town. That may not have been on your radar screen a year ago, but, how do you know you're on target? How do you know when something needs attention?
Sure. So that's a great question. And so what we are driven by are deadlines. Like, I'll just give a few examples, is that turn back, June 30th of every year, is that we have to ensure that we know that our books are being closed. If, for example, like I had mentioned, that the Finance Committee, you folks said 1%, and a key performance indicator could be that if we turned back, say, 800,000, which is 2%, or higher, that we know that we are not reaching that goal. And so our goal is to stay under that 1% or less. Another indicator is, for example, is that if we have the GFOA, I mentioned the GFOA, is that we want to ensure that we are meeting those certificates of excellence level, because they're the ones that give those metrics to us. Ellie did a great job where we look to see, when we submit this budget book, there are 80+ metrics that we have to meet in order to even be considered. So we internally know that whether it's our Schedule A, our balance sheet, that we know that we have to meet these goals and these metrics in order to keep our AAA rating, for example. With human resources, Mary Beth mentioned that I think on a national level, there is the challenge of recruitment and retention. But how do we know that we're being successful? By offering the benefits that most people are looking for in this day and age, and also to do exit interviews so that we gather data, and under John's direction, that when we go to the table with unions, we heard you're looking for this, and this is how we can deliver.
Great. Yeah, and by the way, your quarterly reports actually let me know you guys are counting all the way along. So I think we have a good sense of how ANF, or Administration and Finance, what do you call it? Administration and Finance. Okay, I won't use jargon then. Administration and Finance. Okay, second question. And this again is going to be for everybody, but you get to go up first. How do I say this? There's a lot of bluster in the private sector about doing more with less. And I've always interacted with my private clients to say doing more with less is a fool's errand. You can generally do more with more, you can do less with less, that's the easy stuff. What is hard to do is imagine, how do we do more with the same? Or how do we do the same with less? Those are more realistic parameters. So you've adjusted to a number of changes in the last year. To what extent are you anticipating, doing more with the same or doing the same with less going forward?
Sure. So I think how we approach it in ANF, and then under John's direction, he works extremely well with all of us when we have vacancies. For example, is that if we have a vacancy for a principal clerk of treasurer collector, how could we change that title, change that job description, look at different ways where we could integrate maybe different parts of the organization where treasury and collection could be done differently. So every time there is a vacancy, it's not just, okay, post the position, backfill it as is, as we did the past 10, 20 years. What is the best title? What is the best function? How can we change that? And it can be cross-departmental. It doesn't have to be that just because it was always in land use or was always wherever, Health and Family Services. And so I agree with you, is that doing more with less and all that, is that I think what it comes down to is how can we become more efficient in our work so that if we do have the same FTEs and more work or whatever that is, that we can still be successful.
Yeah, I have one question for CJ and one that's a toss-up anybody can take. CJ, I know commercial assessment is different from residential. The rents and income streams affected. I guess, do you have any sense of how is our commercial sector doing year over year?
From an assessed value perspective? Yeah,
Well, the
so,
assessed value is derived from their rents and their income, so I'm just trying to get a sense.
sure, so this past year, I believe the increase was somewhere in the range of 4 to 5%. Previous year was more than that, if I remember correctly. Tough to speak to, you know, off the cuff about how businesses are doing off of that. But, you know, if you see values, you know, income and expense value, derived values as how businesses are doing, then it seems fairly well.
Good. The toss-up is, does anybody know what percent funded the Middlesex pension plan is?
It's in here somewhere. It's in here somewhere. Do you mean by the whole system or just for Acton?
No, just, not the whole thing, because we're just one of
Oh,
many.
no, I don't know. Does somebody else know?
The 6 million?
We're on target to pay it off in the mid-2030s, I know that.
Oh, okay, is that, I apologize. So you're wondering when we are expected to be 100% full paid. So the goal is 2037, but also is that we have started last year the $300,000 use.
That's different.
That is,
No, that's OPEB.
that's the
Yes.
OPEB, okay. So
Now, the Middlesex pension, I'd say, has been chronically mismanaged. At least I can only speak for the last 20 years. And the assessments seem to go up every year, 6-7%. I'm wondering, I've heard rumors that it was going to be fully funded one day, and we'd stop seeing that,
Okay.
but Ellie knows something.
What page?
It's on page 15.
Page 15. I knew it was in here somewhere.
Thank you, Ellen.
Page 15, it talks all about that question, Steve.
I have it open. I can
Okay, Ellie, take it away.
Okay, so on page 15 in the executive budget summary, we have a section on Middlesex County retirement. And the assessment is set to increase through fiscal year 2028, after which point it's set to stabilize, and then we are predicted to be fully funded by fiscal year 2036.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I have a question about that, since you're still there. Sorry. Doesn't the point at which these pension funds are fully funded depend on market returns? Right? So when we have really good years in the stock market, shouldn't those assessments be lower? Or the increases, the annual
So
increases?
the pension system is run by a board, and they make decisions on how to allocate the investments. And I think they use a conservative discount rate to make sure that they can not overestimate and not underestimate. So I think certainly if the market does well, it improves the whole position, but we do an actuarial analysis every 2 years, I believe. And at that point, we kind of recalibrate the schedule, and occasionally it'll shorten. Usually it doesn't. Sometimes it goes the other way, but we've had a couple good years, so maybe the next one will show a different outcome.
So do you ever push back? Like, if you're doing, do you just rely on their actuarial analysis, or do you have anything, is anybody pushing back on them to make sure It makes
I
sense?
think, so the Acton organization in the 90s or early 2000s pushed back pretty significantly. I don't remember what happened at the end
I
of that
remember.
story. But in any event, it's an assessment that's issued to us. We push back to the extent that it's a good use of our time.
Yeah, okay, I was just curious, thank you.
My recollection is a few years ago, they were in the 40s, low 40s in terms of percent funded, so it's an improvement.
And also, if we pay on July 1st, then we receive a discount. On that same page, my apologies for misunderstanding your question, Steve, but if you are interested in OPEB, it's the following paragraph.
I fooled you, I know I always ask about OPEB. I decided to change it up this year.
I have a few questions. I'm just going to ask all of them and let you decide who best to answer them. I noticed that the medical opt-out increased by 36.25%, so I just want a confirmation of that my assumption is either accurate or inaccurate. Does that represent a tax savings for the town? Not a tax savings. Because I'm assuming that costs less than providing the insurance. And I also noticed an APS, that's Acton Public Schools, retiree health increase of 24%. So that's the health question. About the assessment plan moving forward to do, a little bit, 10% every year for the decade. That sounds nice to have the levy, it go onto the levy as soon as 9 years earlier, but I'd like to know what the impact is to the taxpayer, because it seems like that's going to make a lot of unevenness in assessment for, building to building, home to home, in a way that it doesn't happen now where they're all done at once. And then the tax collection rate is going down I understand we have one of the highest in the state, and it's only gone down by 0.2%, but that represents maybe $800,000. So I'm wondering if anybody knows why, and if there's any if there's any plan to address it. And then my fourth question is about, well, actually, yeah. So it seems a positive thing that the general fund interest income has gone up. I think it was more than double. That's pretty dramatic. And I'm wondering if is that because we're doing anything differently or just the interest rates have changed in that?
Okay, so I took notes. I can handle the first two, and then I'll ask CJ to come up regarding the question about the assessment, the 10% tax levy, and the tax collection rate going down. So the opt-out, for those who may not be familiar with it, is that if you do not carry, if you're benefited, and you do not carry health insurance with the town, we will pay you either $2,500 for an individual plan or $5,000 for a family plan. That is much less than the approximately $26,000 for the full premium plan. So it's not necessarily like a tax savings, but it is a savings to the town because we're not offering the health insurance. So that's that opt-out. And the reason why it has increased, which is actually good because the health insurance, then premiums decrease, is because more people have signed up for it. And also we increased to $2,500 and $5,000 for, again, individual family plan. APS retirees, the reason for that increase is that we did actual numbers with APS, and those APS retirees who came over to the town a few years back, and before it was an estimate, and we needed to know the true exact numbers, which did increase it disproportionately, but doing those numbers, I feel very comfortable that we are well-positioned for fiscal year '26 of what the real bills will be for the APS retirees. I'll hand it now over to CJ, and I wrote those questions down unless you memorized them.
All right. I'll speak to your question about the data collection project. So, and let me know if I miss or anything an aspect of it, but I believe your question was essentially, if this is done 10% annually rather than all at once, what kind of impact will that have on people's assessments, and will it remain equitable? So I want to clarify that These projects do not impact our annual adjustments in values. That's based on our sales analysis, that's based on all the income and expense information we receive, everything like that. So what this does is it confirms all the data that we have on every parcel. So when we go out to a parcel, we make sure that we have the right amount of bathrooms, we have the right depreciation, is the basement finished, all the basics. Because if if you don't have those basics of the data correct, then any adjustments we make are gonna be that much less accurate. So what this allows us to do, and kind of where it ties into the growth piece, is it allows us to, on a rolling basis, make sure everything is correct. So it's not that everyone who's being seen that year is going to see an assessment increase, because just as often you may see a decrease. We may have you in good condition, but you're in average condition, given the year built and the style home that you have. So in my opinion, and I think factually, it will increase equity across the assessments, because it's going to make sure that we remain timely with our inspections across the board. Oh,
It was tax collection was the next one.
the collection rate, right? Okay, yeah, I don't.
Small
It's just the way that we made the graph. If it started at 0, you wouldn't even notice.
I acknowledge that
unfortunately-
it's only 0.2%, but still, that's, $800,000. So
Sure.
I'd like to know if there's a plan to figure out how we can get back up.
I don't have any insight on that, unfortunately. I would potentially defer to Teresa.
We can get back to you on that.
I did not fully write down your interest income
So
question.
I was just wondering about, it looks like it's gone up.
The interest income.
The interest, yeah, the general fund interest income, which is a good thing. I'm just curious, does that have to do with what we're doing, or is it just a change in the interest rates?
Oh, sure. It's both. So conversations with Teresa O'Leary on that is that an example is Bank of America was not giving any interest income, or other institutions with less. She, on a daily basis, will look and see where the best investment is and will move the money. In addition to, obviously, the situation that we are in, all of us, for interest bearing. So it's a combination of both.
Got a couple of questions. I think two of them are very easy yes/no answers. Less than 2 years ago, it may have only been last year, we switched to having a service we switched to sending our real estate taxes into a P.O. box in Boston. There was at least one quarter with a pretty serious hiccup on that. And the reason why I call it serious is because it hit me. It may not have hit that many part of the town, but it definitely hit me. Did that change end up saving us money? Did it free up resources elsewhere? And how sure are we that that hiccup's not going to happen again?
I'm going to have Brandy answer that.
And she's the next question too, so that works.
So it's the P.O. box, is a hiccup, and will we experience that again? Are we comfortable with how it's happening now?
Yeah, we continue to learn with the P.O. box, with the lockbox on what's working and what's not, and changing things that aren't working, so that, because it is such a cost savings to use them, that it's in our best interest to make it work. I can speak to, before the lockbox, we would take home, there was, collector treasurers had quite a bit of overtime hours, because we would spend about 3 weeks processing payments, weekends included. Now, we are usually caught up, I think our last big bills, we were caught up in 3 days. So it's definitely saved a lot of money and a lot of time.
Okay. I see as a goal for next year to be able to do pay by credit card. That will require a surcharge for the people paying by credit card, correct?
Correct.
Good. And then I told you that one of the questions was a simple yes, no. And then the last question is for CJ. We, as a finance committee, set our recommendation every year for the ability for, when we try to figure out how much to recommend in increases in taxation every year, we continue to land at 3% because we use Prop 2.5, and we've been using a wild card of 0.5% of new growth as our base guideline. Does that feel appropriate to you? Do you think that that's something that should be changed? Do you think that we're in and around the right place? Are we chronically low? Are we chronically high? What's your take on a 0.5% increase with new growth and every year that doesn't include something like insulin?
Sure, right. And I think that's a big piece is, we'll have powder mill, and then, there are going to be years where we can foresee things occurring where that growth is going to jump. But if we want to use one stable and appropriately conservative number, I think that we're in a good place.
Thank you very much.
Hi, couple of questions. One is about human resources, and I'm wondering if you've been tracking, comparing our turnover rate with, other municipalities, Massachusetts trends, and how we're doing. I mean, I know everyone's been hit, all the municipalities have been hit hard by increasing turnover, but I just wanted to understand how we were doing.
I can begin that answer, and also I think that if Mary Beth, you want to join in this conversation. And so we are in the running, in the ballpark of turnover, which is about, if you take about like 60 positions that we filled with a 200 FTE count, is that is a fairly high percentage. Talking with and seeing postings with other communities, municipal communities, that they're experiencing the same. Sometimes what we see is that we're able to backfill positions sooner than other communities, but there are certain titles that have licenses that no matter what are hard to do. I think, Mary Beth, if you want to add to that?
Yes, we are not formally tracking that right now. That is something we could do in the future. We do talk to our colleagues in surrounding communities constantly, whether it be through email. We have an email list. It's at the MMHR email list at conferences. It's definitely a statewide problem. It would be interesting to see the formal tracking.
And my last question, how much longer do we get to keep you, Mary Ann? I got to understand from this report that, you're not staying here forever, which is unfortunate. Just wanted to thank you for all you've done and find out, how soon we have to plan for a party and that sort of thing.
Oh, a party. Oh, all right. So in the budget book, it actually talks about, I think, the transition. And so I had mentioned I've been in this field for 38 years, and it's more so that my husband is saying, when are we going to be able to enjoy life? I love life right now. I am not lying to any of you. I say to people that if you love to golf and someone said to you, you really should stop golfing, that's kind of how I feel about my job. I've been so fortunate. But the plan is for me to retire around the August, September time period. But what we've been doing under John's direction is ensuring that you will not skip a beat. I think that you saw some of these examples tonight, and the A&F staff is absolutely phenomenal, and you're going to be in awesome hands. And so this is where I go like squirrel, that I have this little joke that I was going to share with all of you tonight. So maybe this is time appropriate. So it just takes 1 second, okay?
It's your big announcement.
All right. Because I thought, what could I do right at my last budget meeting? I would end. So how do you know your son or daughter or your child is going to be a CPA? Anyone know that? No? Okay. So when you read your child the story of Cinderella, and you get to the part where the pumpkin turns into a golden carriage, then your child will ask you, is that ordinary income or a capital gain? So, no, Allison, no, okay.
I have one question. I asked Steve Barrett this a couple of years back. The state pension fund gets better returns than Middlesex. They seem to be managed better. Does the town have to be with Middlesex, or can we put our pension funds with the state program? Or is it something,
yeah.
something that,
So-
based where your town is, you have to go with that county's retirement? Because small percentage.
We do.
Every year over a long period of time adds up to a big percentage.
Right. So there were approximately 56 pension plans throughout the Commonwealth, which you probably know. And the Commonwealth, the one is run by the state treasurer, PERAC, the Public Employee Retirement Administration Commission. We belong to the Middlesex County Retirement System, and I believe that we are required to participate in Middlesex County Retirement System. But I just am looking to John because you also mentioned something.
I just think the PARAC invests a lot of the money that is in Middlesex anyways. I think we are part of that in some way. But I think there are communities that have their own pension system, which I would not advocate for, because there's a lot of overhead that comes along with that. But, I think we're in a tough spot. I mean, we tried to fight the system 15 years ago. There's an end in sight to the unfunded liability. I think we keep plugging away and do our best to keep costs down and spend wisely, because of the salary growth leads to the pension growth. So we have to be aware of that and make sure that we're keeping salaries appropriate so that it doesn't impact pensions accordingly.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was part of the group that was trying to get out 15 years ago. So it's possible, but it was decided it wasn't really cost effective. Too much overhead.
So I just looked at the funding ratio currently it's 55.21%. So it's a long way before reaching 100%, which means that the cost will keep going up. So if we cannot get out, then anticipate the cost going up. This is not something that you cannot forecast. This is something that is calculated by actuaries, so you know that it's going to go up. Which is the interest cost of the unfunded liabilities will keep going up for the next 14 years. So either keep exploring the way of getting out, or you have to anticipate, and that's going to be part of the payroll as a percent. The fringe is a percent of the payroll. So with that, then any FTE that you add to it, that will also incur this pension cost. So
That's a really good point that you make, and just wanted to point out that that's when we have to do the budget every year with John, is that we obviously have to take that into consideration because of those increases that you said are built in and that we automatically see. Thank you.
If you think of other questions, you certainly could email me or email Mary Ann, and we appreciate all the thoughtful questions. And were there any in the handout that you wanted to mention?
I think we hit them all.
Okay, good. We'll get Leo up, but can we, nice job, A&F. And thank you that might have been the first joke that we've had at a budget workshop that it's at least in my time here, so thank you for that. It's a good way to go out. Thank you, Mary Ann. We're going to hear from our town clerk, which is a little bit outside of the agenda, but hopefully you'll indulge. Our town clerk is Leo Mercado.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight, letting us present to you. First, I'd like to say thank you to all these guys. These guys do a great job every day. I got to be honest with you. They work. So any kudos I can throw their way, they deserve it. So let me just go over my budget real quick with you. So my name is Leo Mercado. I'm the town clerk. Alicia Burek, she's my deputy town clerk. So our core duties in our office: managing public records, birth certificates, death certificates, marriage certificates, those things that everyone comes out for when they need them. We're there for that. Administrating elections and voter registration, we get that accomplished through a lot of work from volunteers and poll workers, which we could never get it done without their help. I'd like to say thank you to them as well. And then we also coordinate town meetings, and we post public notices throughout the town. It's a little bit of an archaic system, but that's the way Massachusetts is. We still go out, we post it in 8 different locations throughout the town for every meeting. So, issuing licenses and permits, business certificates, marriage certificates, dog licenses, and things like that. We're in the middle of a dog license season right now, so if you have a dog, please remember to register that dog. So, record keeping for town ordinances and resolutions. We keep all those records. We have them in book 1. I look at that thing regularly. It's pretty interesting to look at, 1735. So my area of the budget book begins on page 88. So if you'd like to take a quick peek at that, it's brief. So some of the accomplishments from my department have been, the past year was dominated with elections. We all saw that. So including one of the largest elections in United States history. There was a huge turnout for that. And then as a newly appointed leadership group in my department, we stood up to those challenges and ran the presidential election in a very smooth manner. We also had to turn around and help organize and run a special town meeting 3 weeks later. I feel like that went pretty smoothly without any major hiccups. The transition of responsibilities from my predecessor, Eva Skiratic, to myself, I feel like that has gone without any problems. Some of our goals for 2026. We'd like to streamline that town clerk page. That's something that's been really bothering me since the day I got here. And now that I'm in the leadership position in my department, I'm gonna make sure that gets done as soon as possible. So we wanna make it much more user-friendly and easier to navigate. I see some different municipalities, they have town clerk pages that I admire, and I'm gonna use those as examples. So the state of Massachusetts will also be rolling out new vital record system for their system. So we're gonna require a lot of training for that. There's all different things that they're gonna be asking us to do, things that we're gonna be responsible for that we're not responsible for now, but we're gonna be trained on that, so there won't be any issues with that. And then we'd also like to complete moving everything into all of our equipment into one location. We're looking at 18 Windsor Ave as our new storage facility. So that's gonna be where we're gonna be able to keep everything located in one spot without any concerns about security and things like that. So those goals will not only, so we'd also like to look at streamlining some of our processes. We've put the DBAs online. Those are 100% online now. So when you're requesting a business certificate, you can go right to the website. That's done electronically. There's no more paperwork to fill out. And then it expedites the process. You get that turned around in, I'd say, about 4 days instead of the 2 weeks that it has been taking. So we'd also like to look at different processes that we have in our office and get those online as well. So we're looking at everything. Some of the metrics in our office, the total residents according to the 2024 municipal census, 21,236. Total registered voters as of today, 16,357. Marriage licenses processed in 2024, 103. Public records requests, quite a few of those, 273. Dog licenses, we processed 1,831 of them. We'd like to get that number a little higher because I'm sure there are a lot more dogs than 1,800 of them in the town of Acton. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time. Have a great night.
Oh, wait, we have questions.
You have questions?
We have questions.
Sure. What's your question, Greg?
Well, 21,000 population?
That's according to the census.
Is that down?
It's a little down, but that's with an 87% return rate of our street listing / census. So what I'm going to do with that, I'm going to send out follow-up notifications when I don't receive the number that I want. So I'm going to be sending individual follow-up notifications to everybody that has not returned a census to me. So that should kick that number up quite a bit.
Okay, I was wondering if they had all, like, moved to Boxborough or what.
No.
Okay.
Not yet.
Then the quick repetition of the questions I asked earlier. What metrics or key performance indicators do you use to know that you're?
I'm a bottom line guy. If I get it done, it's done. So.
All right, then how about some secret sauce? How do you estimate how many people are going to turn out for town meeting?
How do we estimate that? We go by previous history. So we look at the numbers that have shown up at the previous meetings, and we also look at the topics. So you can tell if it's a hot button issue, how much staff I'm going to need to have on hand. So.
It's 500 people. You double it if there's dog leash involved. You quadruple it if it's
So have you considered opening a sports betting kind of operation?
Any other questions? Oh, very good. All right, guys, have a great night.
Nice job, Leo. So we are moving on to the next scheduled program, budget, which I believe is the Land Use Department. And they're going to come up together, is that right? Yes. There's still some pizza left up there, I believe. Olivia. I think we're ready to get started. Are we ready to get started?
I think we're ready to roll.
All right, let's rock and roll.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, so good evening. I'm Kristen Guichard. I'm the Planning Director and Zoning Enforcement Officer. It's nice to see you all here tonight and some new faces that I haven't had the opportunity to meet personally yet, but hopefully we will get to do that soon. I serve as the Planning Director and Zoning Enforcement Officer overseeing the Planning Division and Conservation Division, which includes Senior Planner Kayla Sauer, Nate Ryan, who is our new Assistant Planner, and Barbara Rhines, who is our part-time Cultural Resource Planner. And in the Conservation Division, Ian Bergman, the Community Conservation Specialist, and Olivia Barksdale, who's here with us tonight, our Conservation Agent that joined our team this year. And I wanted to just mention Alicia Barak, who Leo mentioned, was our previous administrative assistant, who we are very proud of, who got the deputy clerk position, and we are now reposting and actively searching for her replacement. So the Conservation and Planning Divisions manage permitting and provide direct staff support to 10 different boards and committees. The number of permits and permit types that we manage really fluctuates year to year. Some years we have more complicated permits, development projects, for example, that may span several months. And other times, in other years, we may have less complex but more administrative permits, like sign permits that are very fast turnover. Our permitting is now fully online, and this past year, we worked to complete the transition from the historical data migration from Munis into OpenGov, with a big thank you to our GIS team for helping us with all of that background work. And beyond permitting, both divisions work closely with the community to realize the vision for the natural and built environment. And if you've had the pleasure of working with the staff of the Planning and Conservation Division like I have, you, I'm sure, know that they are very passionate about the work that they do. And the Planning Division provides project management for initiatives identified in action items through various community plans. Almost all the projects that we manage are funded through state and federal grant awards that we actively seek. And in order to implement those action items, we typically need additional consultant support. So we make sure to get that in that way rather than trying to just go for additional funds to town meeting. We use these community plans really to direct the work that we do. And one of our key performance measures is our ability to raise the voices of Acton residents and help the community to come to consensus on implementing the action items set forth in those community plans. This past year, the Planning Division staff helped the community come to consensus on 3 major zoning efforts, which all passed town meeting with a supermajority vote. The MBTA Communities Overlay District, updated South Acton Village District, and the Powder Mill Overlay District. These efforts help to achieve several action items in the Housing Production Plan, Acton 2020 Comprehensive Community Plan, as well as the Climate Action Plan. After the positive vote at town meeting, we applied for and received additional grant funding in about $30,000 for an economic feasibility analysis to pursue a deeper and higher affordability requirement in the MBTA overlay district as a direct response from the community feedback that we received. So we will be kicking that off in a few months. And then over this summer, the planning department also kicked off the housing production plan update and the Habitat for All initiative, which is a natural resource protection zoning and inclusionary zoning project combined. And this last effort is a collaboration between planning, conservation, and our sustainability departments. We continue to provide project management for the Kelly's Corner infrastructure project and oversee Acton's shared services for the Regional Housing Service Office. We are excited to announce that the recent approval of the Open Space and Recreation Plan was received, and this was led by Kayla Sauer over the past year. Adoption of this plan will open a significant amount of grant funding opportunities for both conservation land preservation and recreation funding. And speaking of grant funds, I wanted to give a shout out to Ian Bergman, who stayed up late on a beautiful Friday summer afternoon to submit that land grant, which helped to offset the Weatherby land purchase by $500,000. And our conservation agent, Olivia Barksdale, is now working to finalize that land purchase. And I don't know if, Olivia, you want to give a quick update on where we're at?
Absolutely. My name is Olivia Barksdale, and I've been with the town of Acton for about 6 months. I'm currently finalizing the due diligence for the purchase of 19 and 35 Weatherby and working on drafting the conservation restriction with the Sudbury Valleys of Trustees. The house has been demolished and we're on track for closing, hopefully in early spring.
So lots of exciting things happening, and in addition to helping preserve land, the Conservation Division provides daily support managing the Wetlands Protection Act, monitoring and managing over 2,000 acres of conservation land, more than 50 miles of trails, which we also want to give a big thanks to the land stewards for all of their work. The division also runs environmental programming and education, so stay tuned for March because there will be a whole initiative about migration and vernal pools, so it should be a lot of fun. And clearly educational. Turning to the budget book, so if you have that in front of you, it's page 62. You'll notice that a majority of the planning division and conservation budgets are comprised of salaries. With the exception of anticipated salary steps, you'll note on page 64, the planning division budget is proposed with a 2.58% increase. One change you'll notice in the budget is a new line item for community engagement materials. In the past, we have pulled from our supplies line item to pay for public workshop materials. And one of our goals is to increase public engagement, particularly with community members who have not traditionally participated in the planning process. And we want to make sure that we're always ensuring to ask 3 critical questions while we do our work. Who does it help? Who does it hurt? And who is missing? So we have increasingly been taking on more public engagement efforts in-house, and we need to make sure that we are adequately supporting these efforts. The conservation budget on page 67 shows a 2.9% decrease in the overall budget proposal. And this year, we are very grateful to have been able to work with the finance department, as Ellie mentioned, to really work with them on reorganizing our line items to better align with the spending purposes. So for example, we have removed meals and other supplies and created a new line item for community engagement. In addition, we have consolidated the contractual services solely for contracting services at the Arboretum and moving funding for tree removal and beaver mitigation into professional services. That way we're better able to track the work that's being done at the Arboretum rather than some of the other work that we're doing for resource protection. So I just want to thank you all for your time, and I'm really happy to answer any questions tonight and any follow-up if needed.
First of all, you get kudos for using the word or the phrase key performance indicators in your introduction. Those are the only questions I have. You're stealing my thunder. But let me ask them the second question. You are already making lots of adjustments One of the adjustments that you've made is you're sort of backfilling and covering for the Economic Development Director. So how do you plan, prepare, adjust going forward? How do you anticipate the unanticipated?
That's a great question. I think in our line of work, working in municipal government, there's always unknowns and always things that are coming our way, new laws coming down from the federal government or the state government, and changes, within our organization. And I think it comes down to the great staff that I have to work with. They're extremely knowledgeable, and we're able to be nimble and share our work, and able to bounce ideas off one another and work collaboratively. So it's worked well for us since I've been here, and more so even in the past 5 years. So I'd say collaboration is key.
Well, then one follow-up question. Since in the past we've been able to look to the federal government for grants with the change of administrations next week, have you anticipated what you're going to need to do next?
That is a difficult question to answer. I'll leave it at that for now.
We were just going to finish with the land use presentation from our building commissioner, and Kristen and Ed will take questions, further questions. I'm sure there are others, if that's okay.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ed Mullen. I'm the building commissioner. Thank you all for being here to listen to us tonight. The building division in the land use office, our office up front consists of four customer service representatives, 2 full-time and 2 part-time, with one of the FTEs being dedicated to the building division. We have 5 inspectors, including myself. There are 2 additional inspectors, 1 full-time and 1 part-time. There's a part-time plumbing and gas inspector, and our inspector of wires is shared with the town of Littleton through an IMA agreement. The state has finally approved and promulgated the 10th edition of the state building code and is running concurrently with the 9th edition until June 30th of this year. The online permitting software OpenGov has streamlined the process for reviewing and issuing permits for the building division, as well as other divisions and departments. Additionally, we were able to extract data efficiently from, for example, the building division issued 96 rooftop solar permits in FY26, and I can search that and find that information in about 5 minutes. Over the last 2 years, the building division has tried to best leverage our resources to provide excellent, consistent service. This includes the Building Inspectors Revolving Fund. In FY25, we began contributing annually towards the fleet program and the cost of our own vehicles. The Building Division took on the annual cost of OpenGov software as well. In FY26, we proposed funding a new fire prevention officer position out of this fund. The fire prevention officer works with the building inspectors as part of the inspections team. This will improve inspectional services overall and will better service the residents of Acton. Thank you. If you want to go to the budget book, we're on page 59, and you can see that there's some metrics in there that just show permit numbers, the fluctuation from year to year. There it is. And permits by type. So in the estimated cost value in 1,000, you can see that as well. We're towing a pretty good line through FY24.
So you have lots of metrics. Which ones do you use to know whether you're on track or behind, or
Sure.
What are your key ones?
So permit numbers overall is what we look at, and then we break it down by category, whether it's building, plumbing, electrical, mechanical, and gas. But I was really excited to get past August 8th of this year because that gave me 1 full year of data in this software. So I can tell you that date is like infamy for me, is August 8th is the day we implemented it and started. So I'm able to at least go back to that time frame. So it's exciting for me to be able to go in there, and the analytics in this are fun.
Direct follow-up to that question is, what is the average turnaround time for getting a building permit now, and has that decreased over the last couple of years?
Significantly. Last year when I did my presentation, which I rewatched just before tonight, I had come up and said that I originally got here, we chased paper around the office because it was all done by hand. We've taken permits that were taken 30, 60, 90 days, and we're doing them in 2 weeks to 30 days. But an average, like a roof, if you want a re-roof or rooftop solar, 4 to 5 days for a review, as long as there's no missing information from the applicant. If they provide everything, we can get it out in 4 or 5 days.
Thank you. You also just said that I'm a little confused, maybe I'm just reading this wrong. Is the fire prevention officer going to hit your budget, or is it going to hit the fire budget because it's listed in the fire budget?
So I'm proposing to fund it out of our revolving fund, the building inspector's revolving fund.
Okay. So, Mr. Mangiarotti, is that, am I misreading that? Under the fire line, you got a one fire prevention officer. Should that be being funded out of land use?
Which line are you referring to, or which piece of paper?
The FTE.
So we put it in the fire department because that's the department it's in. Where it's funded from initially, we're proposing to fund it from the building revolving fund with the hope that over time, the fire prevention revolving fund, we'd be able to transfer it to that. But the need is immediate, and the fire prevention revenue we don't have as much because we don't have an officer actively doing the work. So while it's in the building revolving fund, it will be a fire department position that reports to the fire chief, just works very closely with the building commissioner and the other inspectors to do the work of inspections throughout the day or the year.
So you're hoping that within 2 or 3 years, that FTE will come out of the budget revolving, building revolving, and go over to fire prevention revolving?
Yeah, the fire prevention revolving fund was just established by town meeting, I think, last year for the first time, and we looked at fees that we charge for fire prevention services, and they hadn't been adjusted for a while. We adjusted them, and the chief is going to talk about this when she's up next. But the goal would be to have a dedicated resource to help look at fire prevention across the community, and we believe that that would lead to an increase in revenue in that account and allow for it to be closer to self-supporting. And I think it makes a lot of sense for the building revolving fund now and even for an extended period of time because of the collaboration and the work that they do together on a daily basis.
I just want to make sure that we can track it and make sure to
We'll update the sheet next year.
Yeah, therein lies some of the rub, right? Things get shuffled around, so I want to keep track of, once we add a new FTE, that there's a reason that we don't just say, well, now we're funding it out of fire prevention, so we have a free spot over in land use. That's what I'm trying to avoid. I have 2 other questions. What is the revised date for the completion of Kelly's Corner? It was supposed to have been last summer. The very first time it was presented, I paid close attention.
I'd be happy to
because it was
answer
time
that.
when Parker was going to be able to walk out of the high school.
So it has always been fall of 2025. That hasn't changed, and that's still the schedule, that's the projected schedule still today.
Okay, and then there have been no 40B projects for the past 2 years. We're not in safe harbor, correct?
We are not in safe harbor any longer, but with our latest building permit for the powder mill project, we have submitted that to EOHLC for inclusion on the subsidized housing inventory, which should bring us to 10%.
And is it possible that the reason there's no appetite for 40Bs is because we've made permissive enough zoning changes? The developers are just not interested in keeping the 25% housing restriction imposed by 40B? Or do you anticipate that because we're this close to being in safe harbor that we are going to be free from 40B for the foreseeable future?
I really can't predict that. I apologize, but that's not something that I can predict.
Thank you.
You going?
No, you go. I'll wait till afterwards.
Just to follow up on the Weatherby land, I heard you say that the house had been demolished. What about the antennae?
And the cars.
And the cars, yes. The buried cars.
They are still working on that. They do have active building permits for removing raw material, including the cars in the towers, the wires. But one of the good news was the commission was concerned about a car potentially being in the vernal pool, and during a site visit with the landowner, he was able to pick it up, so it actually wasn't a full-fledged car. And so, long story short, we're still working on removing everything.
I was wondering about that because I was on the walk when the guy kicked the roof and it moved, so.
So 1 car down.
Thank you. I'm involved with Acton Troop 1 Boy Scouts, and for your conservation land, trail maintenance, scouts need conservation time. So definitely coordinate with the 4 scout troops in town to set up time. They mostly do it on weekends because the kids are in school during the week. So it's something that we've done with Acton Conservation Trust twice in the past year. One was the Weatherby property to initially go through it, carve a trail. So if you can utilize them, it's a good thing to do.
Yes, we definitely do appreciate the Boy Scouts. All of their Eagle Scout projects, probably most of our boardwalks. I can think of one recently, I believe at Pratt's Brook, where he had an ambitious project that he did achieve, helping with a stream crossing. So we definitely do and still utilize the Boy Scouts. It's just working with Ian, it's a quick email, and he has, depending on where they're located in town, trying to match them to what logistically makes sense and trying to help them through the process.
Okay, I'll have the troop coordinator reach out to you for that one. Thank you.
Yes.
Hi. I had a couple of questions about the fossil fuel-free building bylaw and the new Acton specialized code. The specialized code's been in operation since the beginning of the year, and the fossil fuel-free bylaw cut in the spring. So I guess my first question is whether you've noticed any change in the workload of the building department to implement those things. More work, less work, or what?
Slightly more work. The review process, when a set of plans comes in now, we're measuring square footage closely to see if the project actually requires them to meet the fossil fuel-free bylaw, whether it's a level 3 renovation or a new construction project. So a little more time on a plan review, but we've cut the time off in the other places, so it's still efficient. What we have noticed is a lot of applications come in just under the requirement. So they're doing level 2 renovations, or they're doing additions under 1,000 square feet that don't trigger it. So that's what we're seeing. A lot of people is going just under the threshold. The people that have built new houses, even before the fossil fuel-free bylaw came in, because there were some incentives from Mass Save, they went electric anyway. And that one contractor came back to me and said that he would never build a house without it again. And he did it on his own because the rebates were there, but now he doesn't even care if the rebates are there. He said the heating and the cooling of that house is so much more efficient and comfortable that, and we've just had a new house come in this past week that's going to be all electric as well. So
That's great to hear. We always anticipated that the fossil fuel-free bylaw would be particularly easy in the residential situation for exactly the reasons you described, that it's just, makes economic sense and it provides a better experience for the people that are living there. But we did anticipate on the commercial side that there would be situations where it wasn't practical, either technically or financially, for some aspect of a building to be all electric. And I was wondering if you had any reflections on how that side of the process has gone. I mean, I've noticed that on the select board, we haven't seen any waiver requests yet, but I'd love to know a little bit more about what's, behind the scenes.
Sure, great, good question. Well, just this past week, I had a meeting with a gentleman by the name of John Crandall, who is a representative from McGovern Automotive Group. He's a project manager. I sat down with him, and he had some of those exact questions that you're asking now. Where can I ask for a waiver? Where should I be saying that I don't need a waiver? So we went through their floor plan fairly quickly, but mentioned that, he should keep the electrification in the back offices or any place where there was smaller areas that they can control the climate. And then he was saying, asking about the mechanics bays, whether the doors are always opening and closing. They'd still like to continue to use the waste burner oil equipment where they don't want to have to transport that off-site. That's an added cost. And additionally, in the showroom where they're going to have vaulted ceilings and cars are going to go in and out, he was asking if he could go to maybe a mixed fuel type where it's generally heated by electric, but if they do vehicle shifting where they could maybe turn on the HVAC equipment that might be gas-fired to bring the place back up to temperature, shut it down, and go back to electric. So they were looking for so I think you will see that one. Another interesting question I got this past week was Marcus Lewis Tennis Camp is moving, or tennis program, and they're looking to do their own location, and they were talking about doing either a inflated building or a stretched tension fabric building. And again, he was saying he didn't think that, heating those with electric would be affordable or efficient for him in those scenarios. So he was asking if that would be something that he could request a waiver on, and I said that I would certainly bring it to the board. So
Well, we look forward to having those conversations, so learn how to be a waiver request board. Thank you.
Yep.
Nice work, land use team. Do you want to take a quick break or want to keep going? That's up to the chairs.
I heard multiple people say break would be good, so I'll say we think break would be good.
All right, so we'll start up again in 5 or 6 minutes?
Sounds great.
Okay.
I'm ready. Okay, Finance Committee, have a seat.
Okay, thank you for that break and for those thoughtful questions in the first half of tonight's session. We're going to kick off the second half with the Fire Department led by Chief Anita Arnhem.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Finance Committee, Select Board. Appreciate your work here with us with the budgets. My name is Anita Arnhem. I currently serve as the Fire Chief and Emergency Management Director for the town of Acton. I've been a member of the Acton Fire Department since October of 1989, and I'm currently entering my 36th year of service to the town. I appreciate the opportunity to present various budgets currently managed by the Fire Department, and I'm very honored to serve with the women and men of the Acton Fire Department who provide an exemplary service to the community. With me tonight, I'd like to introduce Deputy Chief Christopher Samet. Deputy Samet's a 26-year veteran of the Fire Department who's worked his way up through the ranks and was promoted to Deputy Chief in January of last year. Deputy Samet has been a great addition to the administration as we meet the many tasks and challenges of running the department, and we continually strive to bring the department forward and provide dependable, quality service to the community. In your budget book, our budget starts on page 69 and provides the mission statements of the Fire Department and Emergency Management. You'll also find a list there of the budgets managed by the Fire Department. The Acton Fire Department is currently comprised of 46 FTEs, as seen in the organizational chart on page 70. Just as a quick additional note, the Acton Fire and Police Departments jointly are responsible for the E911 system, dispatch system, run out of the public safety facility, which falls under the Police Department budget. Currently, 35 FTEs are accounted for in the general fund, which includes the chief, deputy chief, office manager, 4 captains, 4 lieutenants, and 24 firefighter positions, which include both EMTs and paramedics. The remaining 11 FTEs are accounted for out of the ambulance enterprise fund, which includes the ALS coordinator, 8 firefighter paramedics, and 2 impact shift firefighter paramedics. This brings our current complement to 46 FTEs. When fully staffed, we run 4 shifts consisting of a captain shift commander, a lieutenant, 8 firefighter EMTs, and at least 2 of which are paramedic level. Monday through Friday, an ALS coordinator is on the clock, along with the chief, the deputy chief, and all supported by our office manager. Currently, recruiting and retaining staff has been challenging, particularly firefighter paramedics. We currently have 7 vacancies and 2 impact shifts that have remained unfilled to date, primarily due to some contract restraints which we are in the process of currently working through. We're aggressively recruiting to fill these vacancies and to relieve the burden of overtime that our members have been filling. The fire service is charged with 3 broad objectives: life safety, incident stabilization, and property conservation. Over the years, the fire service has transformed into an all hazards response organization, no longer responding only to extinguish fires. Members must be trained and skilled in a number of areas in order to provide for the safety of the community. Services provided include fire suppression, prevention, education, training programs, pre-planning, hazardous materials response, emergency medical response. If you saw TV recently, ice and water rescue, auto extrication, active shooter response, emergency treatment of police canines under Nero's law, search and rescue, fire investigation service, and the list goes on. Basically, if someone needs a service and they don't know who to call, they dial 911. Fire service personnel are problem solvers. We'll get the problem solved one way or another. We're fortunate to have a member trained as a certified fire investigator who provides tremendous service to the department and, in fact, to several area communities as a member of the District 14 Fire Investigation Team. We also work cooperatively with the police officer who is currently seeking training in the art of fire investigation. Police department involvement and cooperation provides us certain legal authorities required in investigation. We obtain grant funds to participate in student and senior awareness of fire education programs known as SAFE and Senior Safe. The SAFE program provides fire and life safety education to school children in our schools, and Senior Safe aims to reduce older adult and fire injuries and deaths through education and training relative to the unique needs of seniors. As technology advances, so do the challenges for the fire department. New materials act differently under fire conditions and produce different toxins when burning. One area that has become of particular concern and challenge for the fire department is the installation of solar systems, energy storage systems, and lithium-ion batteries that have become very popular. We have to take a whole different approach when these batteries are involved in fire. Currently, fire administration, with the support of line staff, is challenged to keep up with the demand for fire prevention services and is currently responding primarily to activities only as requested. However, we should be doing more to take a proactive approach to fire prevention. The addition of a full-time fire prevention officer will allow for a more consistent application of fire prevention regulations, provide a single, consistent contact for the public, and allow for a more proactive approach to fire prevention. Establishment of a fire prevention officer would subsequently allow administration and line staff to focus on other critical areas of operational activities. It is anticipated that a full-time fire prevention officer will lead to increased revenues from permit fees and, if necessary, fines for compliance with certain fire code requirements, though our goal is to assist with compliance and eventually become a self-funded position. This position is presented currently to be funded in conjunction with the building division, as many fire prevention activities are conducted in conjunction with the building division. Functions of the position will include, but are not limited to, code enforcement, ensuring compliance with fire codes, building plan review, fire safety, occupancy inspections, pre-planning activities, maintaining Tier 2 hazardous materials handling and storage requirements and documentation, school safety inspections, including fire drills, fire and life safety risk assessment, review of fire protection systems, energy storage, system compliance, issuance of code violations, record keeping, and testifying before the Board of Fire Prevention Regulations when necessary. The fire prevention officer will be the primary contact for issuing a variety of those permits. It includes things such as the simple 26F, which is fire alarms and fire detectors and carbon monoxide detections, welding, cutting, and other hot work, open burning permits, blasting, energy storage systems, fire protection installation and repairs, flammable and combustible storage, hazardous materials storage, temporary heating equipment, special event projects such as fireworks, black powder, and various other special permits. So the list goes on. If you turn to page 72, you'll see a list of changes and ongoing challenges the department is facing and a list of our accomplishments and goals. Primary goals this year are to increase our overall efficiency of operations and safety for our fire personnel. Moving on to emergency management, that's on page 73 of your document. Emergency management is charged with ensuring the town is prepared to respond to a variety of emergencies, including weather events, pandemics, significant fires, active shooter events, disruptions in infrastructure, etc. A cache of equipment is being acquired and stored for ready deployment as needed, and additional permit storage locations are being evaluated. Emergency management preparedness grant of $5,100 annually have been utilized to assist in building our cache of equipment. In FY26, we hope to exercise Acton's comprehensive emergency management plan through a tabletop event and complete a full inventory of emergency management resources and continuing to maintain those resources to be ready as needed. Page 74 of your document talks about or shows the enterprise and revolving funds. These funds include the fire alarm network revolving fund. That's our maintenance and repair of our current 100 mil fire alarm network. The red boxes, red call boxes you'll see either on the poles or on buildings. And that budget itself is located on page 173. Other enterprise and revolving funds include the fire prevention revolving fund, which you heard the town manager state is new, so it does not have much revenue in that yet, but it will eventually support a fire prevention officer's position with the collection of permit and inspection fees. That budget is located on page 183. The ambulance enterprise funds budget, which supports the operation of the town's ambulance service, is located on page 170. Going back to fire on page 75, it offers a graphic of statistics over the past 10 years. If you look at the center graph, it depicts the fire department emergency and medical services responsive, which have been trending upwards over the past several years, and particularly this last year, and continues to do so. Over the past year, we've had an increase in the number of simultaneous requests for service, often necessitating the need to call in mutual aid from our surrounding communities. We also provide mutual aid on a regular basis to our surrounding communities. On page 76 is the Fire Department General Fund budget, and on page 77 are some interesting points to note. Primarily, one of our biggest cost increases this year is the equipment repair and servicing, which includes our apparatus repairs, which has shown a sharp increase in cost for required annual service, maintenance, and certification of equipment and apparatus. I know you all submitted, or many of you submitted questions. I think you got the short list of answers. If you need additional information on those questions, I'm happy to take that now. Or any other questions you might have. Metrics.
Yeah. You have so many metrics in here, I won't even ask you which ones are your key performance indicators, unless you want to single a few out.
Well, one of our biggest key performance indicators, I would direct you to NFPA 1710, which talks about response times to both fire and medical services.
Key. Cool. Now, let me get to the mutual aid issue.
Okay.
All the towns around are going through budget squeezes. Would you assess that we're providing other communities with mutual aid at about the same rate that they're providing us, or is somebody out there slacking and counting on us to sort of backfill?
It's kind of hard to say if anyone's slacking because we never know where the emergency is going to be. However, I do have numbers for you. Total incoming mutual aid response, which includes medical, fire, and other, is 161 over the course of the last year. As far as outgoing mutual aid, 236.
Got it. That's it.
I had a question about the FTEs. It said, so your department is asking for 2 more firefighter EMTs, but in the FY26 goal, it says fill vacancies. You said you had 7 vacancies right now?
We currently have 7 vacancies. We struggle along with every other fire department. Ideally, we'd like to hire firefighter paramedics. We get a number of requests from firefighter EMTs, but we need to maintain our ALS service. So we're currently undergoing a pilot program to determine the best way to organize and be most efficient with that resource.
Okay, so that says fill vacancies and add 8 additional. Does that mean 15?
Not 8 additional. Right now, the town manager has reduced that to 2 currently.
Okay, all right, so that's, all right.
But I'll just explain too, that those 2 will assist with the 2 impact, and so that we can add 1 more person per shift.
All right, thank you.
Chief, do we, in regards to response times, for years, North Acton was the problem until we built the station out there. Is there a problem now? Does any part of town have a much longer response time than any other, or the average?
So I think we're doing much better. North Acton definitely needed a station located up there. That's our busiest district in town, most responses. I would say that our response times to all areas of town now with that resource have improved, and I don't believe there's any one particular area that's underserved.
And as far as the FTEs, how does your current staffing compare to what's recommended by the National Fire Protection Association in terms of how many should we have based on a, whatever, 20,000 population?
That's a difficult answer to find. It all depends a little bit on your population density and what your population is made of, residential versus commercial and things like that. And I've looked many times for a standard number, and I've not found that standard number. However, I can tell you that for a single-family residence, it's recommended that you assemble 17 firefighters on the scene within X number of minutes in order to attack that fire. There's 22 critical tasks that have to be taken initially at the scene of a fire.
And let me say, you don't have 17 firefighters on duty at all times?
We do not.
Okay, thank you.
Hence, that's why I initially asked for 8.
It's a finance committee, we can do the math.
Absolutely.
Will these 2 additional firefighters, I understand that you say that this adds with this swing shift and will add one per system, or per shift, you said. But will this represent a decrease in overtime costs? Will there be any tangible savings, or is this just 2 new FTE to the top line?
I believe that by having additional personnel, it will assist in reducing overtime. Right now, we're running fairly high on overtime, but it's offset a little bit by the vacancies. So, I mean, obviously, people are going to have personal vacation and things like that that are going to have to be taken into account with additional personnel.
To Greg's point about key performance indicators, if you come back next year and say we added 2 new firefighters, but we saved X amount of money in overtime, that will go a long way to helping your cause in the future. Similarly, if it doesn't, it won't. So please know that that's going to be a question you're going to get in the next year. In the past, I remember looking at the number of cases, and it was, I must be missing something, maybe it's how it's being reported, but I remember it being way more lopsided, that the number of medical cases was almost 6,000, and the fire instances were significantly lower. And as I recall, there was one year we had one fully engaged house fire. Is this fire department emergency responses number, does that also include some set of medical responses? Because
yes, because when you respond to a fire, you also respond, when you respond to a medical, we also have fire apparatus responding. We have new software now, so there's garbage in, garbage out, right? So we're working on making sure that things are accurately recorded and so that we can look at the data a little bit better.
it's to that same purpose, it's that same indicator that I'd like to talk about. I understand that you want to hire firefighters that have the advanced life-saving paramedic level. Why? Why do we not just hire paramedics? Why do we not just have ambulances? If we've got a 10-to-1 ratio or whatever the number is of medical instances versus fire instances, why are we rolling gigantic fire trucks when we need to be rolling an ambulance? It's going to end up being significantly more efficient if we can have the right number of paramedics for the instances that we see.
So, and I know John wants to jump in here a little bit too, but right now we're able to take advantage of firefighter paramedics to provide both services. We have indeed discussed hiring paramedic only. Some of that is going to involve contractual impact issues as well. So it's not just turn the switch and hire paramedics. We have some ideas moving forward. We're going to start with our pilot program that I introduced on Monday night as far as looking at efficiencies in operations, and we have some ideas on how we can better utilize our paramedics. Right now, we have instances where our paramedics, 2 on an ambulance, I'll give you an example, they're responding to a broken ankle. They're tied up, they go to the hospital, there's longer wait times at the hospital now to have them transfer care to the hospital. Meanwhile, we get a second call with a BLS ambulance, cardiac arrest. So now my paramedics are tied up on a BLS call when I need them for an ALS call that the BLS crew is handling. So if we can, and that's where you saw information on the fly car. Fly car allows you to triage appropriately and get that paramedic service to those that need it most and make sure that you're not tied up providing care to someone who doesn't, or providing medics on a call that doesn't require medics.
I just feel that there's definitely room for efficiency there on the paramedic versus rolling a fire truck for a medical.
And we agree with you. And I think it's something that in the last 2 years that the chief has been the head of the department, she's brought some serious vision and leadership, and Deputy Salmon as well. And in the past, things like that would have been a non-starter. But now it's something that we're working closely with the department to implement. And so we can't do it today, but I think that we'll be able to do that soon, and it will address that need where, sometimes it would be helpful to have a few medics and not fire medics. We certainly need a full complement of firefighters, but there is an opportunity potentially to use a medic-only situation to supplement or to improve the way we respond. So thank you for that suggestion, and we're with you on that.
Yeah, we're aggressively looking into that.
Excellent.
Yes.
So I had notes about this, so maybe I'll do a little follow-up. Is the fly car model, does that mean you would staff the ambulances with BLS and the fly car would just go to one place, treat the patient? The ALS might go into the hospital if the patient needed care on the way in, but otherwise they would stay with the car and return back to the station house.
Correct, and if we're able to staff it with 2 paramedics, they could actually split and provide care to 2 patients at the same time if necessary. If you have an MCI or a mass casualty incident, they would be the ones to help triage, start treatment, and send them in BLS under those circumstances. It's a much more efficient model, and it's actually the model that used to take place here with Emerson Hospital. Emerson Hospital ran a fly car with 2 paramedics servicing 14 towns. And they were able to do it. They did recognize towards the end of their service that they needed a second fly car to service that many towns. But it's a much more efficient model of providing the appropriate care at the appropriate patient.
And for the ambulance enterprise fund, are we able to bill for both the medical care provided in ALS plus the transport? Is that 2 separate billing?
So right now we have a separate ALS bill, a BLS, well, it's 2 levels of ALS billing. There's the ALS 1, which is just minimal ALS care, and then there's ALS 2, where you are doing some more advanced treatment and 3 or more interventions. So that's a different level of billing. Right now, for example, if we provide ALS mutual aid, which several towns around us do not have ALS, and sometimes they'll call us for that service, what happens right now is there ends up being 2 ambulances dispatched, one from their town and one from our town. The person or the ambulance that does the transport is going to pick up the bill. If we send our medics from our ambulance in their ambulance and both go to the hospital, we're able to assess them a $250 fee. Pro EMS currently operating their fly car out of South Acton, which is servicing numerous towns, so they're not always available to us. They're charging a $450 fee. So we've already talked with finance about matching fees.
Thank you. I have 2 other quick questions. Will the fire prevention officer deal with any red flag conditions, or will they just deal with structure fires and their contents? In your list, you talked about structure fires, hazardous materials, all sorts of things, but I didn't hear you mentioning anything about, we don't get wildfires here very often, but we did a little bit, not in Acton, but we did in Massachusetts this year. So will the fire prevention officer deal with that as well?
The fire prevention officer will be looking at all risks in the community, and that includes red flag warnings. And as you mentioned, the state was in a state of drought this year. It was the largest state mobilization activation of a task force, which Acton responded twice. We responded once to Salem and once to Wilmington with a brush truck strike force. So yeah, it's an all hazards, all risk fire prevention officer.
Thank you, and I have one final question. Do you know the last time that we added firefighter paramedics to the department?
With the exception, yeah,
expanded a shift.
With the exception of the ALS coordinator, which was added, I believe it was 1988, we added 8 personnel. And actually, back at that point, we were in a better position because we had our staff. Emerson provided the ALS service, and that provided more personnel on a critical call. Right now, we'll get 4 personnel on a critical call. If we have a fly car, now we can increase that to 6, which is the old model.
Thank you.
Sorry, I do have a follow-up, if I may. I'm just trying to make sure I understand the staffing. You've got 46 currently, and 46 current, 46 in the FY25 budget. You said there are 7 vacancies. Are those vacancies, do you have currently 46 employees, or do you currently have 39 employees?
39 right now.
Okay.
So there's a lot of overtime, and it's a big burden on our personnel.
Have those 7 vacancies been an entire year, been the entirety of the previous fiscal year?
No, one of them just occurred as of the 11th of this month.
Okay. So we have 5, 6, 7 full-time employees who've been budgeted for, monies have been appropriated for, but those services were not rendered because there weren't bodies to fill the vacancies,
They were,
correct?
those vacancies were filled with overtime. We have to provide the staff in order to fill our stations and to man our apparatus. So it may not be coming out of a full-time FTE, but somebody has to fill it, and that's being filled with overtime.
What's the likelihood of getting everything staffed this year?
It depends on what direction we go. We're looking at various models. If we end up going to a fly car model, we can open up some of those positions to firefighter EMTs. And, you know, during the whole transition with ALS, there was some concern that when we were hiring paramedics, they didn't come with fire experience. We had to send them to the academy, which we do with all new hires that don't have that. But many times when you hire a firefighter EMT, they're coming from another department and they have that fire experience. So we got a little paramedic heavy for a while with less fire experience, which concerned the staff. And then now we're getting lighter on the paramedic side and need to fill some of those vacancies. I believe if we look aggressively at how we want to change our operational model, I believe we'll be able to fill those vacancies.
So we're holding over $500,000 in overtime, just on the fire department side.
Correct.
Thank you.
I have a few questions. Jason already asked my question about overtime. I'm assuming it's more financially prudent to have the additional staff rather than rely on overtime, as well as all of the other things that you mentioned about being able to train in-house, firefighter safety, morale, and overtaxing the staff. Is that accurate?
I believe that's accurate.
Okay, even with the benefits that come with an additional FTE?
I think so. I mean,
because overtime is time and a half?
Overtime is time and a half. Overtime is paid for filling shifts, is paid for training outside of the department. When we send someone to the academy, we backfill them. So there's overtime there. Okay. So there's a lot of different categories of overtime. But right now, most of it's being filled, or most of it's being charged due to the fact that we have the vacancies.
Okay. In the FY26 goals, you have listed a goal to promote additional lieutenants. So is that dependent on the approval of additional firefighters? Because if you're promoting firefighters,
so
are you in the future going to add lieutenant positions or have fewer firefighters officers because they've been promoted to a leadership position?
Our goal is to get additional staff per apparatus. Because right now we run 2 people on a piece of apparatus. That's not a safe way to run the operation. I mentioned the other night, we have OSHA mandated 2 in, 2 out. That means you're not supposed to enter a fire structure until you have 2 firefighters available to go in and 2 firefighters available to be out to rescue them in case there's an issue. And as I mentioned, you need 17 firefighters on just a single-family house fire. So assembling all those people takes time, and time with fire is logarithmic. It doubles in size every minute. So it's critical to get started on a fire as quickly as you can. Over the years, with 2 people on a piece of apparatus, first piece of apparatus pulls up, you got 1 person to pull the line, the other guy has to engage the pump. Engage the pump, he joins the guy on the line, and they go in, but there's nobody there running the pump. You're relying on somebody coming in behind you to establish a water supply, to ventilate, to do a number of other operations in order to attack that fire.
So accomplishing 3 staff on each vehicle is going to be possible because of the pilot, not so much the promotion to promoting more lieutenants.
Correct. Well, it's promoting people within. So right now I have 1 lieutenant. And each fire company, in the ideal world, which is going to take us a while to get there, I understand that and we realize that. In the ideal world, you have a company with an officer. So every piece of apparatus has an officer in charge of that apparatus and in charge of the staff on that apparatus. So if we end up with a model where we're able to, like for example, the pilot, we're consolidating, so there's going to be more people in the station. Same number, on duty, but within the stations. So if we're going to be doing that, the ideal thing would be to have a lieutenant in each of those stations. So we can promote that from within.
Okay. And then I have two more questions. So we have about 10 years, 10 years of performance metrics with the fires extinguished. And I think up until FY '22, I would have said, oh, yes, we need fire prevention because the number of fires extinguished is going up. But then there's been a pretty big drop, half, from FY '22 to FY '24. Do you have any ideas about what's causing that drop? Because it's surprising given, drought situations. And how likely it is that it's going to go back up? Like, this is not a drop that's because of what we're doing.
It's difficult to predict emergencies that are going to occur. As far as the fire prevention officer, there's all kinds of things that are going to happen regardless of whether or not you have fires. That's independent of whether or not you have fires. There's tank installations, there's occupancy installations, there's safety things that need to be done. There's all kinds of, solar needs to be inspected by fire if they have an energy storage system. That's going to continue, and that's what's bogging us down. The deputy and the captains are doing most of that work right now. The captains are tied up with that a good portion of the day. The other thing that happens is if we do send the captain or a company out to do an inspection, and I believe Ed Mullen can attest to this, oftentimes they get there, tone goes off, they gotta leave. Now you gotta reschedule. That's inconvenient for the property owner or contractor.
Okay. And the inspector. Sorry, Ed. All right. So, yeah, I think I'm clear on what the fire prevention officer's duties will be. I'm getting hung up on the fire prevention and thinking, back to my elementary days, like, oh, that's going to be fewer fires because we all know how to prevent fire better. My last question is about the fly car. If that gets added to the department, will that serve other towns?
I believe when you put up a service, you have to do what's called a service agreement. And you need to make sure that what services you provide, if they're available, they may be available to another town. If it's a double medic fly car, again, we could split if we have to, you know what I mean? And we're thinking about all different types of operational models where we can, I'm not gonna let all our paramedics go out of town. That I'm not gonna do. We're gonna keep paramedics in town because this town has requested the ALS service. It's a vital service, and in fact, I would say more than half of our medicals are ALS-based.
Okay, so I said that was my last question, but you mentioned, the reason I asked it was because you mentioned Emerson was running a fly car for 14 communities. So I was wondering, how many communities Acton's fly car might serve, and if there's any opportunity for revenue generation from that.
I believe there's definitely opportunity for revenue generation, but again, we have to come up with a model that's not going to strip our town of that service.
Hi, Chief. Thank you. Alex Lenz, this is my second meeting, new associate member,
Welcome.
so thank you. You mentioned other towns were having vacancy issues as well. What are the trends with that and the challenges that you're facing as a department to attract, new employees to fill those vacancies? And what's your confidence level of being able to fill them if you're competing with a lot of other towns? Thank you.
I know that a lot of towns are in negotiations in order to try and figure out what they can offer. We're doing the same, and we're trying to be competitive out there and provide a good benefit. One of the things I will say with our current challenge of 2 people per station is firefighters don't join the department to work with one other person. That's not why there's a sisterhood and a brotherhood, there's a team and camaraderie, and they depend on each other to know their jobs, do their jobs, and in fact, for their very lives, they depend on each other. So that's part of our problem of not being able to attract personnel, is because, and in fact, if a new person comes in, they're assigned to Station 1. There's no lieutenant during the day oversight there. The lieutenant's up north, but the ambulance is here. So new people generally come into the service with us on the ambulance. They may be assigned with a fairly new person, and they don't get the mentorship, they don't get the training as much as they really should. We need to foster that in order to give them a good career path and to learn and know their job. So I think there's opportunities out there, but I think we're going to have to change some of our operational models to get that.
Hi, thanks for the time tonight. So just to recap, is like you have 46 spots today. There's 6 or 7 openings of those 46. But you had been looking for 8 additional personnel, but that was reduced to 2. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so like 8 on 46 is a pretty sizable increase. And I appreciate what you said, but back to Greg's point on just the metrics is, if I am looking at page 75, the fires, emergency medical responses, et cetera, they generally look over 10 years to be flattish. I think our population is pretty flattish to maybe even slightly down. Do you have additional metrics? You had cited response time and national standards as one. I think that just was like one data point. Just generally, it would be really helpful just to have more context around like a larger hiring increase like that. If the request was 8, and I understand it is actually now 2. But it does jump off the page, like 17, 18% increase in headcount versus flat. Everything else that's listed here for the most part.
So that initial request was based also on running 4 stations and that would only give us 2 more, 1 more person per station, 2 more people per station. So that would give us a complement of 3 to 4 per apparatus, which is what we're looking for overall.
Okay.
I would rather have an engine show up with 4 personnel than 2 engines show up with 2 personnel.
Yeah, I guess just from our perspective, it's just much better to sell the idea, just to understand the numbers around it, like what is going into this, because as we discussed earlier, like obviously every additional personnel, salary, pension, benefits, and so on and so forth, and it does become something we all need to deal with over the longer term.
I understand that, but the safety of our personnel is also paramount.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. So I just want to have a clarification question to make sure I'm reading the right numbers. So on page 76, the FY26 proposed budget, that includes the 2 FTEs that you intend to add, right?
I don't believe that includes, does it?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
So
Was added
that
in?
explains the increase in the regular salary. But from what I heard is that you expect the overtime will go down, right? Because if adding FTE, then you will be able to protect the current employee, the staff. So the overtime will go down, but you still see the overtime goes up, the proposed budget, overtime goes up by around 5%.
And I believe that was instituted to cover some additional training that we would like to be able to provide our members.
It's also reflective of actuals. The overtime budget was significantly overspent the last 2 years. And while we believe that filling vacancies would curb that, we do think that it's necessary to increase the overtime budget just because of every employee has a right to vacation and so on. And if you look at that across the workforce, across the entire year, it's going to incur overtime just as a baseline. And then there's the other things that happen that also incur overtime. So while we hope that then we won't go over budget as much as we have in the past, we do think it's necessary to increase it still to have a more appropriate amount of money in the overtime budget.
Right, so we're talking about FY26 and then FY25, so you would expect the actual FY25 overtime will be over 525,000.
Yep, potentially.
Hopefully not, but yeah, probably.
Right, thank you.
But it would probably be higher if you don't fill the vacancies, right? So it's going to offset.
I'm sorry, say that again?
The overtime budget, it's going to exceed budget if you don't fill your vacancies. Right? There'll be an offset, right?
If we don't fill the vacancies, we're going to have to fill it with
Right.
overtime, yes.
Okay, so, yeah.
No other questions? Sure.
So I understand we're not ready yet to buy electric vehicles, either for the ambulances or any of the fire apparatus. I was wondering what the key technical or financial factors would have to change for that to be realistic.
I would think that the dependability, and part of the problem is, even on a quick charge, like, I believe I was sent a electric ambulance ad or information, and a quick charge on that ambulance is 4 hours. You know, I can't say, hey, we'll be there in 4 hours. I don't have a charge. The other things that we have to consider is the lights, the radios, the equipment in the ambulance, in the wintertime, the heat, and in the summertime, the air conditioning. Those are all gonna draw down. Sometimes we send an ambulance to do a standby at a fire. It needs to be running, and it may be there for a couple of hours. So the technology has to get a little bit better in order to do that. I did hear recently that there's a cab service, that the way they manage some of that is when they pull into their cab garage, they just drop the battery out and put a new battery in. So technology just has to improve there. And I think all the stations would have to be upgraded for their electrical service. Yes, sir.
Kind of related to that, for the new fire engine that's on the capital list, what brand of equipment do we expect to buy, and why did you choose that brand, and are there other choices?
Okay, so we do currently have an apparatus coordinator and an apparatus committee that gets together to look at what's available out there. And the committee researches the department needs and what is available. A Seagrave is the manufacturer that we're looking at, and the chassis is a Marauder, so it's a Seagrave Marauder 2. We've had good luck with those engines. We have some of those engines, so it assists in, you know, constant maintenance and parts and things like that. As I said, it's the same manufacturer of some of our frontline engines. It comes with a stainless steel body and chassis, which probably helps with some of the salt and issues around New England. It has been dependable and reliable, lower maintenance costs, shorter out of service times. We get better service from Seagrave than some of the other manufacturers that we've used in the past. My apparatus coordinator said that he's found it to be a superior product, and he prioritizes maintenance service after the sale in particular when it comes to those vehicles. And also looking at the lifespan of 15 to 20 years, we want something that's going to be dependable and reliable.
Thank you. And I have one question for the town manager. We had a home rule petition in to be able to hire public safety individuals in a wider circle around town than is allowed by state law. That home rule petition did not pass, is that correct?
Yes, unfortunately, it was filed 2 years ago and was hung up in whatever happens when things get hung up for a long time. Although the good news is that Representative Cena's office notified us earlier last week that they have refiled it, and hopefully they'll get a fresh look at it. And you know, I know the fire chief, and I think even the fire union and other folks have reached out to advocate for that. And maybe the select board, I think the select board did in the past, maybe we could ask you to do it again. And that speaks to the vacancies as well. Thank you for bringing that up. Under Mass General Law, we're limited to a 15-mile radius for where we can hire people from, which really limits our pool from a numbers standpoint, but also an equity standpoint and other reasons. So we're looking to reduce all the barriers we can to hiring, and that one, we need some help from the state legislature because, so hopefully we'll get swift action this year, and anything that you can do as politicians would be appreciated.
Yeah, I just thought of that now because it was not on Representative Cataldo's refile list. So maybe we can get him to sign on to Rep. Cena's bill. So I'll see if I can do that.
And I'll reiterate, that has indeed been a barrier to hiring.
Thank you.
Other questions? Burning season just started, so get your permits, be safe. Thank you.
Can I just make one last exit comment?
Absolutely.
I covered the story about the ice, and one of the things that I was impressed with is that you leveraged the opportunity to talk about fire safety in addition to, oh, by the way, we saved the following number of people and, they're good. That it was a kudos for that. Brilliant move, leveraging people's attention on a news topic to remind them about public safety. So nice
Thank you.
move, nice move.
Thank you. And just as a added note, tomorrow we're going to be talking with ActonTV about how to save yourself if you fall under the ice or fall through the ice. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Okay, well, we're right on schedule, and our closing act tonight will be the police department, which is led by Chief James Cogan.
Yes, sorry, inexperience. The body camera's not rolling, but it's ready to, so. Good evening to members of the Select Board and Finance Committee, and thank you for the challenging work you do. I am not only the police chief, but I'm also a resident of Acton and have been for over 30 years. Joining me tonight is Douglas Sterniolo, our deputy police chief, who joined the department 24 years ago. He was hired as the deputy chief about 1.5 years ago, or promoted. We currently have 46 FTEs on the police department. The police department is comprised of 42 sworn officers, 2 full-time clinical responders, and I will say that we just were able to get the second one on board in the last couple of weeks, so we're very happy about that. We have a business manager, a records clerk, and a service dog that is not reflected in the count. We are committed to enhancing the quality of life for all those who live in or visit Acton. I would like to start by publicly thanking all of the first responders who serve the town of Acton and provide excellent services to anyone who needs assistance of any kind. I'll begin with my list of accomplishments. First of all, and I'm kind of going through the year, in May we received our reaccreditation. And why is this important? Accreditation demonstrates the department's commitment to adhering to high standards of professionalism, ethics, and operational effectiveness. We also implemented a body-worn camera program. Body-worn cameras and vehicle cameras provide and record interactions between police and citizens or residents or visitors, promoting accountability among officers and building trust with the community. We also added a Lightning pickup truck as an additional supervisor vehicle, which is now in service. It is driven 7 days a week, and it's in addition to another supervisor vehicle we currently have. And this has worked out very well. One of the reasons for this was our supervisor vehicle, Car 8. We always have a supervisor working, and that car would be run from just 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we had problems with it because of that use. At this time, we used Car 18, which is the Lightning, during the day, so that car has a chance to recover a little bit. It needs less service, and we're very happy with the results we've had so far from the Lightning pickup truck. So we also created a peer support team, which includes police, fire, and dispatch. Public safety personnel are significantly more likely to be exposed to critical incidents than the general public due to the nature of the work. And I can tell you that we've had a couple of very critical incidents in the last year that many of our staff have been affected by. So it's great. In the aftermath of a critical incident, peer support teams provide immediate assistance and help individuals process their experience and recover more effectively. Our staffing remains good, but it seems to be continuous. Currently, we have 2 openings, and 3 open positions were filled over the past 12 months. one with the lateral transfer, which is actually very easy. An officer from Maynard came and joined our department, already academy trained. It took about 12 weeks for the field training program, and then she was off. So it takes a lot longer, almost a year, for the other people that we hire to complete the completed academy and then do a 12-week training program. So as I said, our staffing is good. We're down currently 2 positions, but the outlook and the results we've had recently have been very good. Our police budget begins on page 79, and the majority of the budget covers costs associated with personnel. There are also some key performance indicators listed on the pages that follow. I am requesting 1 additional FTE this year, an administrative lieutenant's position. The administrative lieutenant's position will help balance the increased workload of our current lieutenants. This new position will maintain direct oversight over several new programs the department has added in recent years: accreditation and the body-worn camera program. Both of these important programs require a large amount of time to properly maintain. And I will say, this is written in my my notes here, that we're struggling to do that, to keep up with that. The body-worn camera program is excellent. It's outstanding to record all this, but we are recording every single day massive amount of data, and we have to manage that, oversee it, and monitor it, provide it to people that need it. There's a lot that goes along with the body-worn camera program. So this request is critical in my eyes to help with this, to manage these positions or these programs. This position would also serve as a computer systems and grant coordinator and assist with the recruiting and hiring of new police and dispatch personnel. It has been more than 25 years since the department added a lieutenant to the command staff. Our department has grown in the past 10 years with the addition of 8 new police officers, 2 clinical responders, and a dispatch supervisor. Addition of this administrative lieutenant's position is the necessary solution to have the support guidance without overburdening our current command staff. Addition to this position would stabilize the chain of command, support its effective operation, and clarify delegation and responsibility, and also improve communication. In calendar year 2024, which we just ended, the department handled 28,913 incidents, an increase of 10% over 2023. Motor vehicle traffic enforcement, including vehicle stops, increased 30%. 6,028 stops were made by Acton police officers in the past calendar year. The number of citations also increased significantly. We continue to deploy our electronic speed radar signs that we were able to purchase through a grant from the state. So all of those signs that you see around town are items that we purchased with grant money. We continue to put these in locations throughout town to help remind motorists of the posted speed limits, and we will continue with our ongoing efforts to reduce speed and handle traffic complaints. Referrals to our JDP, or jail diversion program, our clinical responders, you could call them, in 2024 continue to increase. Section 12 numbers, which are indicated in the budget book, have reduced this year to 83, which is a great number. That's what we want. And I don't know what to attribute it to. Education, maybe coming out of COVID and people living a more normal life. But that's something that is significant, and I'm proud of the efforts that we have been involved with to reduce that number. I continue to believe that our clinical responders and advanced training of our officers has improved our response and outcomes to calls involving mental health, having a mental health component. Responses to overdose in 2024 remain low, similar to last year, and I attribute that to just a better access and knowledge of Narcan. I think that's very helpful. We continue to be committed to working alongside our community partners, including Communities for Restorative Justice, the Domestic Violence Service Network, our many Acton Town Services, local religious organizations and schools. We continue to build community relationships by conducting a Citizens Police Academy. We participate in a national night out in August. We attend and host several Coffee with a Cop events throughout town. We have a youth academy at Narrow Park we've had for about 5 or 6 years now, which is a great success, and it's great to see our officers get to involve themselves and mentor our youth a little bit and maybe get them interested in becoming a police officer. We also had our second Comb with the Cop event where we got an ice cream truck and went around and shared ice cream. It was awesome. It went very well, and our plans are to do it again. The second part of another budget that falls under my direction is the dispatch budget. The police department also oversees this budget for the dispatch center, which has 9 full-time and 3 part-time dispatchers. There are 2 dispatchers on duty at all times, 24 hours a day. Dispatchers take calls and coordinate an appropriate response by police, fire, and EMS. Dispatchers serve both the police and fire department. And I work directly with Chief Arnhem on hiring and many of the policies that we have in place within the dispatch center. So we will be adding 1 additional FTE in the dispatch center on July 1st as a result of the recent contract that was just signed. And it's due to a scheduling change. We currently work 5 and 2 schedule dispatchers, and as of July 1st, they'll be going to 4 and 2, which requires an extra FTE in order to make that coverage complete. Dispatchers answered approximately 5,000 calls for service or 911 calls in 2024. They provide many vital tasks, including EMD, and I've mentioned this last year, but the importance of EMD to me as a resident is just, it's wonderful to know that when you call 911 from your cell phone, which most of us do now, unless there's some issue, if you're in Acton, it's going to be answered at 371 Main Street, and you're gonna get someone on the end of the line that knows exactly what to tell you and how to walk you through whatever it is that you're dealing with. And that's not something that every community has. And I think it helps save people, and it's a great service that we provide to the town. So I just want to give a shout out, I guess, to our dispatchers for that great ability to be able to reason with people that are hysterical when they're calling 911. They have to multitask and do a lot, as well as, dispatch fire and police, and again, provide instructions. It's terrorizing sometimes, and listening to the calls, it's difficult. So they do a wonderful job. The last part of my presentation here just deals with animal control. It's the 3rd section of our budget. It has not changed. Our ACO has been in place for almost as long as me, or maybe longer. It's been a long time that the Palmers have been helping us with ACO responsibilities, and there's no change to that budget. In 2024, we actively sought grant funding and have received almost $300,000 in funding, $161,000 for our dispatch center, which goes to training, support incentive, and EMD. We also have a DMH grant that we renew for the last 5 years for one of our clinical responders, covers that cost, and the traffic grant that I mentioned earlier for approximately $40,000. And that covers overtime so that we can add extra patrol officers to go out and for that specific reason to enforce traffic. Our other officers throughout their shifts will be enforcing traffic on a regular basis, but oftentimes they're called out of service because they have to attend to a call. So it's good to have this grant in place. And we also have one designated traffic officer whose sole responsibility is to handle traffic complaints as well as provide enforcement. I think that's all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Kudos for using the magic words, key performance indicators. And there is an accomplishment that you may not be aware of that you might want to add to the list. It turns out what we used to call the police blotter is the best read section of Marion Maxwell's newsletter that the senior community gets. And as a member of the senior community who gets it, it is incredibly informative, so kudos for that too. But since you have so many numbers, here's the question I got. Are there times of the day, days of the week, months of the year where we're safer or less safe? Do you see ups and downs?
I'm not superstitious, but you just don't know. You really, we sometimes think we know, and we can look at calls for service and 911 calls. Tuesday might have been the busiest day during 1 year. For what reason, I can't tell you. But there are many people that are superstitious, and Friday nights with a full moon could be busy.
Good to know. That's it.
I don't know, I didn't hear you mention this, but in the graphs, there is something called Section 12S response. What is that?
Yes, I sent a response, and maybe it hasn't made it to you yet. So a Section 12 response is a response to a mental health call. And under Chapter 123, Section 12 of the Massachusetts General Laws, police officers are allowed to seek hospitalization for someone involuntarily that is a harm to themselves or potentially others. And what it does is it allows police to bring someone to an emergency room and basically order that they be evaluated. Doesn't mean they're going to be admitted to the hospital, but typically it's someone that we're at the last resort. And again, with the numbers coming down, we're getting better at spending more time with people, making sure that this is the right thing to do. But it allows us to bring someone that needs hospitalization because they're a harm to themselves or others. And it's due to mental illness.
Thanks, Chief. I have a couple of questions. I want to qualify this by acknowledging that you weren't chief at the time that the 8 additional officers were added. I think you said it like 10 years ago. And that sounds like a similar number to what Chief Arnhem is asking for, so I'm assuming it has to do with the shift. But if you do know, can you share with us, is that an increase in community needs? Is it an increase in population? Is it a little bit of both?
Are you asking if back when we did this in 13, 14, we added 4 and 4, I think it was 2 years in a row to the staff. I think that was just a need that, we had gone a long time before adding 1 or 2, and the population increased, the number of calls increased, and the town decided they wanted a better response times and better coverage by their police.
Okay, thank you. Related to that is this additional lieutenant. I understand completely the need for additional, leadership to oversee staff. I think that's a really, critical piece to take care of. And the numbers are even numbers. So if you, promoted, say, an officer to the lieutenant position to fill that need to manage these new programs that you have, like the body-worn camera, then that's gonna maybe mess up the shifts. And I think it was ideal to have, that we had an odd number of school resource officers. You could take one away and create that clinical position. But is there any possibility to do an internal promotion to cover that position? And if that's not ideal, why would that be?
Yeah, I think that would be the way we would go about it. It would be an internal promotion.
I mean, without changing basically eliminating one other position, as happened with the SRO.
Yeah.
So if that's not good, why?
I just think we need the numbers. I mean, we could, like the fire department, we could survive with 4 or 5 extra police officers, and that may, lower our overtime costs. Because as it stands now, we do try to staff shifts heavy, meaning some days we'll have 5 people on a 3 to 11 shift, but we'll go down to 4, so the first person out doesn't cost us anything. And if we could increase the staffing on all shifts, that would, I believe, lower the cost for overtime, because you would not need to cover the first person out.
All right, got it, thank you. And just one last question. I'm curious, the special police officers that are hired as needed, what kinds of duties are they covering?
Typically, traffic enforcement or, poll duties. All of our special police officers are post-certified. And that's a great advantage to us. I mean, if we were ever to, I think about this, like if we were ever to have another pandemic or something like that, and we had, we lost a large portion of our department to sickness or something, we could actually have those people come back and work as full-time employees. I don't know what that would take, but they're just as well trained as every other police officer. And they have to maintain that on their own to become a special. So it'll cost me nothing. Once they retire, they maintain their certification, they maintain their training. So it's a great advantage to having those people on our department, as part of our department. Same with traffic attendants who are limited a little bit more. Traffic only does traffic. You may see a special police officer at poll duty, where we wouldn't have a traffic attendant at poll duty, because they're inside their responsibility for enforcing the laws and whatever the regulations are in polling places. So,
Are they going to be at a special event like Narra Park, 4th of July, so you don't have to rely on
yes.
the regular staff? Okay.
And we did that last year. For 4th of July, we had all of our specials. That's a requirement. If we tell them, this is an agreement, you need to maintain your training and you need to be here for the 4th of July.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chief. I
Yes.
have a couple of questions, if I may. First one, did the grants for the speed monitoring cameras come with any requirement to share the data with the state?
No.
Okay.
Not that I'm aware of.
Do we use that data to determine if the speed limit on a road is not accurate?
We could. I think Corey York has other equipment that may be more sensitive and better for collection, but we could certainly compare it and use it for, we can often share it with a resident who wants to see what the results are. And I've seen other departments post things on their social media. That's something that we could consider, so that people understand that, it may look like people are going fast, big trucks coming down the road. A lot of the complaints we get are legitimate. I don't want to minimize anybody's complaints, because we have some busy streets, and we spend a lot of time trying to be there, but we can't always be there. And these signs are a good reminder. They flash up in front of you, and they tell you what your speed is, or close to what it is, and you may hit your brake pedal or get off the gas a little bit.
But also, in a lot of places, if a street is set for a speed limit of 25 and people are consistently doing 45, it's determined that the street has a better carrying capacity than 25 and the speed limit is artificially low.
True.
Do we do any of that analysis as well?
I think that's more done by the highway department. I mean, like the 85th percentile of what the speed is, it should be.
Right. Okay. I'm just curious if we're using that data or not, but it sounds like it's
We're
been done.
willing to share it. We collect it and keep it, so we will, we'd be happy to share it.
Thank you. The other police officers and traffic attendants, where do they get accounted for in the budget? Are they under the professional salaries?
They're not full-time employees. They do not get a paycheck unless they work for an outside contractor, or if they work for the town. They work at a lower rate.
But we budget for them, correct? Mr. Manager? I mean, I understand that they're not fringe benefit eligible, but we have.
No, but if they work for if they do an Eversource detail, Eversource pays for it. If they work the 4th of July, it would come out of the recreation budget to pay for the 4th of July. So whatever project they're assigned to, is how they get paid. So if short of a definitive source to pay from, it would come from the police overtime budget.
Okay. I'm also curious that under the professional services line item, the FY '23 was 372,000, '24 budget was 540, FY '24 actual was 390. That's a good $140,000 right there. But in FY '25, we're right back up to a 552. In FY '26, we're up to a 686, when the last two actual numbers have both been sub $400,000. Are we being potentially overly cautious and overly careful on this line item?
What page are you on?
I'm on page
The professional salaries are based on the contracted cost or the known cost for the employees that we have listed in the budget. So in some cases, there were years where people retired and they were being paid more than the people that filled in behind them. And so that may be part of what you're seeing. But in terms of the number that we have for the FY '26 budget, that's based on the positions that we've proposed and how much they would cost next year.
Okay. You said you have two vacant positions at this time, but we're running at 17% above the regular perm cost is, the overtime cost is 17% greater than the regular. What would it take to get, because overtime is time and a half, we're paying 1.5x the price for the value that we're receiving. What would it take to get that overtime down to less than 5% of the overall cost of policing? And I should have asked the same question when the fire chief was up, because they're at 20%. They're even worse than the fire side.
I can't provide a good answer.
I mean, it can be figured out. We haven't done that specific calculation. It would be adding staffing, certainly, and it would be loading the shifts. So as the chief mentioned, he said they plan for 5, and if 4 show up, they don't fill the 5th on overtime. I think that's the calculation that you would have for every shift. So whether the number is, carrying that example further, if we had 6 for every shift, but we only filled the 4, would that eliminate our overtime or get it to 5%, as you suggest? We can look at that, but we haven't yet.
And not to be callous, but if you take the $560,000 on the police side and the and the $550,000 on the fire side, we're at, rounded up to 1.1 million. If 50% of that is inefficient because we're paying time and a half, so a third of it is inefficient, that's $350,000 that we need to manage. Do you see the numbers that I'm getting at and why?
I understand the concept. I'm not sure if I'm following the specific calculations, but I get the concept, and I agree with you. I think there's always a balance in how many FTEs do you want to add to the organization, which will come with a $25,000 health insurance plan, versus are you sure that maybe we can, as the fire chief mentioned, improve the way operations are going so that we have less people calling out or less vacancies. There's a lot of things that go into it. Just piling in people in the door, I don't think is the answer. But there's a balance that we could work better to achieve if you'd like us to try to get that sweet spot of getting the overtime down by adding a little staffing, and other measures would have to be in place too to control the use of overtime. But
I would love to see where it becomes more efficient to pay overtime than it is to have full-time salaried employees. I would love for us to, as a key performance indicator that Greg's looking for, I would love for us to drive closer to that.
I've seen that key performance indicator in the private sector. And it's, the federal government says if you're going to get a federal government contract, you take a person's salary, multiply by 2.5, and that gives the cost for the benefits and an additional profit margin to the vendor who's providing the services to the federal government. But that only works if you're hiring somebody for 40 hours a week and 48 weeks a year. And so you do the math on that. And I'm not always...
Is that the number we use in this town? Do we do 250% of of the yearly salary to cover fringes? It sounds high to me.
We don't, we could look at that, but I think,
Well, they don't have a profit margin, which is what they're giving the private vendor.
You understand what I'm getting at?
But there are formulas that are out there.
so overtime, the efficient use of overtime is caused by, managing the shifts, having a work environment that people want to stay in because overtime increases when the vacancies occur. There's a lot of things that we can do to improve overtime, but in the end, as I mentioned, every employee has vacation time that they're owed and other things that they should use, and when they use it, depending on when, it will incur overtime. I think some of the things that the chief mentioned earlier about the specials, that's actually made a significant step in reducing and being more efficient, because while I mentioned that a lot of the things are Eversource or special events, there are, I think, highway department stuff where he would have to, or somebody would have to order in someone on a Saturday because the highway department is paving, and that person would get overtime. But when we use a special, we pay them a little bit less.
Yes.
Right, so that's one example of doing what you're saying on a smaller scale, but we could look at it sort of for everything and see if there's something we can come back with next year that finds a sweet spot.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. I appreciate the presentation as well as the fire and the other departments tonight. We were in contract, I guess, at one point to have a regional dispatch center. Is that still on the table, looking at other communities around here that we could combine with to save money, like Foxborough or whoever?
I don't think that's likely at this point, although it's not something we couldn't do.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, if you're gonna save money, so you kind of share cost, right?
Mm-hmm.
The specials, I did see the former chief out there several times directing on Patriots Day and things like that. So it's good to see that those officers still want to come back and still work a little bit here and there and help out the town.
Yes.
Listening to this, I think a easy way to do an analysis for both the fire and the police that would take the noise of compensation out but still get to the right answer is to just, you can do it without putting names next to it, and you can do it without petitions or titles, but basically just do an hour per week per employee per year. So there's 50 police officers, 1 through 50. Officer 1 worked 40 hours, 60 hours, 40 hours, 55. Just take the hours during the week, and then you can see clearly where the overtime is. Because the problem with overtime is that depending on the level of the employee, it's going to be a different amount of money. So it doesn't help you by staring at compensation and vacancy because it just creates noise. What the real answer is how many hours are people working and where the overtime is. And this is where the specials can be included in, because the specials are covering hours, right, that the police staff would be covering. But so you have, you can list the numbers. You don't have to put names across, put hours per week and where it kicked to overtime. And then you have the specials and the hours that they covered that weren't covered by staff that would have created more overtime. And then you can do the same thing for the fire. And then you can have a very clean look of just hours in the break between hours worked and overtime. And that can also help drive, it can help you understand the impact of a new hire. Because if you have the hours laid out, like where they were in the week and everything, then you drop in a new hire, and assuming the hours, you can say this new hire would replace these, and you just take the compensation out of it because it just creates noise. And then when you have your answer, then you can quantify the value of an additional staff person versus the offset of overtime. And that way you get to the answer faster, because I just think there's too much noise in compensation to get to a clean answer quickly. And you have payroll, so you know everybody's hours. So you just take last year's actuals, lay it out, and just take the names off, take the comp out, and just do the hours. That'd be my suggestion.
Thank you.
We should connect on that. I would be interested to talk to you more about that if you have time, sometime.
Just a couple things. First of all, I just wanted to acknowledge the direct connection between the Select Board's focus and our goals on pedestrian safety and your increased traffic enforcement. And it's a really important piece of our overall pedestrian safety strategy. So I just thank you for doing that. The next question was about the clinical responders. So now that we've gone from 1 to 2, and I know this is very recent, does that mean that we're going to be able to have clinical responder support for more hours? Will it extend the number of hours?
Yes, that's the plan, to extend more hours per day.
Great, okay, because it seems like a lot of the more challenging mental health calls, I imagine, come in after hours, so after a working day, you know, they're nighttime things, so I'm glad you'll be able to have more coverage for that. Finally, since I'm sitting here so close, I couldn't help but notice the morning band that you're wearing, and if you wanted to have a chance to say something about that, I would like to hear.
Sure, that's for George Robinson, our former chief. I was hired in 1984. Chief Robinson had just become chief, and I was telling someone tonight that I was either the first or second person that he hired back then. So he was the chief for a number of years. He was appointed chief at I want to say in his mid-30s. Served quite a while. He was my first experience in acting with a chief, and really, when I think about it, for the first few years, you know, the chief and the lowest patrol officer don't get a lot of time together. So I can't say that I know him really well, but I did work with him for a good amount of years, and he was a nice man.
Thank you.
And you were also appointed in your mid-30s, right, Chief?
Yes, correct. 2 years ago. Anything else? Well, thank you very much.
Nice work. Well, thank you for all these questions. I think I look forward to any feedback you have, you know, either now or before next Tuesday. But I think we'll try to do the same thing and get you any questions that we get as in writing, at least so you can have in front of you. We'll try to expand on them live, and we'll try to end by 9:30. So thank you for doing this, and thanks for listening.
I move to adjourn.
Hold.
We were going to try to work out our joint meeting scheduling, if that's okay, while we're all in the same room.
Yes. So as you all remember from Monday, oh so long ago, we have been asked to have a moderated meeting between the two boards regarding our disconnect on the DPW building. Last night at the Finance Committee, we suggested a trio of dates, which managed to hit while you guys are all off at the MMA conference, so that didn't work. Fran and I have been in communication. She came back with asking about after the FinCom session on the 28th, we're going to be in the COA and we're already going to be after hours, so that's not going to work. So what we're proposing now, and I'm looking to everyone at the table on both sides, does Friday, January 31st at 6:30, 7 o'clock work for everybody? So everyone pull out their phones.
So Jason, I was going to suggest, we had wanted to have this discussion following the tour, and the tour is scheduled for the 25th, but there's a snow date for February 1st. So would you be amenable to going ahead and scheduling for the 7th instead of the 31st, just in case there's a snow delay for the DPW site tour?
I am low.
Anything could happen, nothing could happen.
Just a second, I just need to double check one thing, because what I don't want to have happen, first of all, I don't want this to go any later than we absolutely have to, because I think this is something we need to get solved.
Is there a reason why they're Fridays?
I wasn't the one who suggested the 31st, so I'm just
It could
suggesting
be any
another
day. It
Friday.
doesn't have to be a Friday.
Friday was the day that you wrote to me, that's why I put it
The
out there.
31st is a Friday, but if we did we could do the first week in February, not on a Friday.
Yeah, we could do Tuesday, the 4th.
So with Select Board the 3rd, I think ALG is the following
Is the
week?
12th.
Someone,
It's the
the
12th.
following week? Okay, so that's not in the way. Does the Finance Committee meet that week?
The Finance Committee does not meet on the 4th. So if we're comfortable pushing it that late, 2/4 at 7 o'clock?
I'm not available. I turn into a pumpkin in February.
Understood. Well, I can afford to lose one, Steve, sorry. 2/4? Do we have, what's that? Will we get quorum on 2/4, 7 o'clock?
February 4th.
No, it's FinCom meeting was
And,
2/11 is the next. is the FinCom
and look at
meeting.
us here right now.
Is CPC that night, or is there something? No?
CPC is February 11th.
Dean, you had mentioned previously that you may have a DPW project presentation to a group on February 4th. Was that February 4th or March 4th?
The senior center is the 30th.
Yeah, I'd have to check that.
Okay.
Should we just stick with the 31st, which is a Friday, January 31st? And hopefully the tour will have happened.
I'm fine either day.
I only suggested the 7th because it might snow and the thing might get
Isn't this-
delayed.
Are we stuck on the 4th, or no, are we moving?
We're
on the 4th?
stuck
Maybe a
because
Wednesday, the 5th?
Steve's not available for the 4th.
Well, he's not available for the 7th either, so.
Okay.
I think we should try for the 31st. I mean, it doesn't matter if the tour has happened or not, right? Or does it matter?
I think everyone's seen it.
Well, you have quite a few new members. So did y'all go on the tour last year? No?
The meeting
The
is on the 25th.
snow date
but
is
snow date
the 1st. So if it snows and they have to cancel on the 25th, then the tour will be on the
It's not
1st.
gonna snow.
Okey dokey.
Oh, she said that out loud, and there's no traffic on the highway. Why don't we plan on the 31st, and we can be nimble if the tour gets canceled.
Very good.
So does a Friday
7
work?
o'clock?
Friday. So what we'll need,
We'll need a room, and we'll need to go down the list of moderators that you and I discussed.
yeah.
I can't
just
imagine
trying to-
we'd have a difficult time finding a room on a Friday night.
I agree with you.
I just didn't want
more
the
concerned.
staff to be here if you're not gonna be here. That's why I was kind of veering off Friday.
If
Yeah,
you're
what do
worried about
you,
the
what do you
staff in the
two
town-
think about that?
If you're worried about the
being here on
staff in town
Friday?
hall, I'm happy to do it in the library, where they let us lock up when we leave.
No, I was just more worried about asking the DPW director to come out on Friday night. But
I don't think we're planning on, I thought we were just gonna have the boards and a moderator.
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't even think that Corey might,
so
yeah.
if we don't have to be there, then
Yeah.
I don't need to be involved in the scheduling. I'm good.
You can leave.
It's up to you.
Sure.
I mean, the
Does
more people we
30
try and add, the harder this is gonna be to schedule.
The 31st, then. do that. Is that good?
Does 7 o'clock work for everybody?
7?
Okay.
Great.
We'll get a venue, and we'll go down the list of 4 moderators, and whoever says yes first wins, or loses, depending on how you want to look at it. Thank
Great.
you all.
I feel like this is a major accomplishment, just getting the date.
Now I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any objections? Thank you very much. Good night, everybody.